Welcome to the fantasy audiobook, Hokage. Start by prying Hinata away. Chapter 41. Anko didn't believe what Fungan said about Orochimaru's death. Because the curse mark on her neck is still there, it proves that Orochimaru is not dead. But she didn't doubt that what Fungan said was false. How could 3 genin kill Orochimaru, one of the legendary Sannin? There is only one possibility: Orochimaru was worried and did not use his full strength. And the body of this grass ninja can prove that he must have other conspiracies, so he has to hide his identity and sneak into the forest of death. Fungan threw the grass ninja's head towards Anko. That's okay, I'll leave. Wait, what's your name? It's here, it's finally here. This is the moment Fungan has been waiting for. My name is Fungan. Anko nodded. Okay, I will remember you. I wish you good luck in the exam. She turned around and looked in the direction of the curse seal induction. Her idea of dying together with Orochimaru did not change because of Fungan's mention of "dear apprentice." In her opinion, this was Orochimaru paralyzing Fungan and the others so that they could escape without anyone noticing. After Anko left, Fungan met the 2 Funghua who were waiting in the distance. Funghua stared at Fungan and looked left and right. Where's the head? Fungan pointed to the place where he and Anko were staying just now. No, it's over there. You want to pick it up. Funghua trembled when she thought of that withered head, and quickly shook her head. I don't want it. Then let's go to the tower. Fungan was in front, followed by Funghua and Shueyu. The 3 of them all headed towards the tall tower in the middle of the death forest. During this period, teams would jump out from time to time, and Fungan would beat them to death and run away with just a raise of his hand. I never encountered a strong team again along the way. Arrive. Funghua and Shueyu hugged each other excitedly. As Fungan pushed open the door of the tower and entered, he found that someone had already arrived at the tower. Fungan was not too surprised by this. He knew that the first one to arrive would be Gaara's team. Unexpectedly, after slowing down a bit, he was still the second team to reach the tower. After Gaara saw Fungan and the others coming in, his unkind eyes wandered away from Fungan. Gaara, Kankuro on the side whispered. Then Gaara stared at Kankuro coldly, and the scattered sand around Gaara rotated slightly. Kankuro looked ugly and avoided Gaara's eyes. Then the sand around Gaara fell to the ground again. Funghua blinked her beautiful eyes and glanced at Gaara, muttering to herself. Is he the young man that Fungan told us to run away when we saw him? She came close to Fungan, whispered into his ear, can you beat him? I play Orochimaru with reservations, do you really think I am invincible? Fungan fooled her into thinking. Can a girl not be so aggressive? Funghua rubbed her red forehead and pouted. I'm not a girl, I'm a ninja. Gaara glanced at Fungan and the others with disgust, then turned and left. Kankuro saw him leaving and asked quickly, where are you going? Gaara glanced at him coldly. Kankuro, who was being watched, lowered his head, sweating profusely, and did not dare to ask any more questions. But after seeing Gaara walking away, he and Temari followed Gaara. Funghua was very puzzled when she saw this scene and murmured, aren't they on the same team? Because he is very powerful and has a twisted personality, even his brother and sister will fear him from the bottom of their hearts and fear that he will be killed suddenly. Fungan answered her doubts calmly. Funghua thought about it and said, he is very strong and has a twisted personality. He seems to be just like you. Fungan rolled her eyes at her and looked at Shueyu. Your sister has a sense of humor. Shueyu smiled awkwardly. The 3 of them waited for a long time, but only saw a small team coming to the tower. The faces of the 3 of them were more or less colorful. It seems that I can't wait for Hinata and the others. After discussion, Fungan and Funghua Shueyu both left on their own. The second day, the third day. It wasn't until the last day that the 3 Hinata arrived at the designated tower. Fungan, Shueyu, and Funghua have been waiting for them for a long time. Inuzuka Kiba waved at Fungan and the others from a distance. You have indeed arrived. Fungan nodded at him, brushed past Inuzuka Kiba, and came to Hinata's side. Seeing this, Inuzuka Kiba walked away dissatisfied. A guy who values over friends. Fortunately, Akamaru is with me. Where's Akamaru? Ya looked down and found that the big dog in his arms had disappeared. Then I heard Funghua giggling. He immediately understood that Akamaru, that perverted, had gone to Fenghua's arms again. You're not accompanying me either. Look, I won't perform a sterilization on you. Fungan rubbed Hinata's little head. You're not hurt, are you? Seeing that Fungan also passed the exam, Hinata was very happy. No, how about you? Fungan covered his body and made a painful expression. I am injured. Ah, where? Let me see. Hinata's expression changed and she lifted up his clothes in a panic. When she accidentally saw his 8-pack abs, her fair face instantly turned red. She quickly turned her head away, but she still looked sideways at his abs from the corner of her eye. Then her little hand unconsciously touched it. She couldn't help but exclaim in her heart. So hard. Fungan felt Hinata's cold little hands wandering restlessly on her abdominal muscles, and her whole body trembled, almost not suppressing little Fungan. While Hinata was still feeling Fungan's abdominal muscles, a head wearing sunglasses slowly poked out from the side. What are you doing? Seeing Shino, Hinata quickly took her little hand away from Fungan's arms and hid it behind her back, trying to hide the physical evidence. The blush on her face instantly spread to her neck, and her body temperature also rose sharply. White smoke could be seen floating above her head. I'm helping Fungan checking the wound. Her voice was as loud as a mosquito, and she hesitated to finish her words. Shino adjusted his black sunglasses with a calm expression. Oh, is Fungan injured? Come and ruin my good deeds again. Fungan glared at Shino fiercely. It's great to know the invisibility skill, isn't it? Can you do whatever you want if you have the invisibility skill? Quote. Shino activated his invisibility technique and blended into the background. Mitarashi Anko's voice rang in everyone's ears. Dear candidates, first of all, congratulations on passing the second exam. Everyone looked sideways, and after seeing the person clearly, they fell silent for a moment. Because next to Anko stood the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen. Looking around, Yuhi Kurenai and Kakashi were there, as well as some of the leader Jonin from other villages. Anko put on the headset and said, Next, I would like to invite Mr. Hokage to introduce the third exam. Please listen carefully. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a few steps forward and coughed lightly. Ahem, the third exam will begin next. Before that, I must make one thing clear to you. That's what this exam is for. Although everyone was confused, they didn't talk to each other and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen silently. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a puff from his pipe and said, If you misunderstand that the United Allied Powers examination is for the sake of friendship between countries and to improve the level of ninjas, then it will be very troublesome. Sarutobi Hiruzen paused and blew out smoke. This exam is a microcosm of the battle between the allies. After hearing Sarutobi Hiruzen's words, the people below started chattering. At this time, Tiantian stuck his head out and asked doubtfully, Master Hokage, what does this mean? Sarutobi Hiruzen continued. In the third exam, many princes and famous figures from various countries who have entrusted us with tasks will come, and they will watch your battle. If the gap in strength is too large, then powerful countries will receive more commissions. This exam is to show your country's ninja strength to others. It is precisely because you risk your life that you can show the full strength of the ninja. Gaara said with a cold face. No matter what, tell me what the third exam is about. Fungan on the side agreed very much with Gaara's words. I don't know how other people feel, but he felt sleepy after listening to it. A man with a haggard face and a very weak look fell in front of everyone. I am the referee of the third game, Moonlight Hayate. Before we start, we have to conduct a 1v1 preliminaries. Everyone in the audience was talking in confusion. Preliminary selection. What does pre-selection mean? Little Sakura raised her hand and asked, Teacher, I don't understand what you mean by participating in the preliminaries. As she asked, everyone became quiet. Because what she asked was exactly what they wanted to ask. Moonlight Swift coughed haggardly. Ahem, since there are a lot of people left, the number of people participating is reduced. Those who are feeling unwell, cough, can give up and leave. The preliminaries will begin soon. After hearing what he said, everyone exploded again. Many people expressed dissatisfaction. What do you mean? We have just passed and we are going to fight without rest. That's right, it's not fair at all. There is no humanity at all. The people around who were complaining and dissatisfied had more or less scars on their bodies, and their faces were dirty and unkempt. When Fenghua and Shuiyu saw their appearance, they were even more grateful to Fungan. If they didn't have strong teammates like Fungan, they would definitely complain about the temporary qualifiers at this moment. Moonlight Gale said calmly, "Ahem, this is a microcosm of the struggle between countries. In actual combat, no one will consider whether you, have a good rest." Hinata looked worried as she looked at him coughing several times while speaking. She murmured softly, "The teacher is the one who is in poor health, right?" After hearing Moonlight Gale's words, the noisy voices became quieter and quieter until the surrounding area became quiet. "No one quits. I give up." Yakushi Kabuto raised his hand, bowed to Moonlight Hayate, Sarutobi Hiruzen and others, and walked towards the door. He recognized Orochimaru among Sarutobi Hiruzen and others early on. Now that Orochimaru is at the scene in person, there is no need for him, the spy who collects information, to stay at the scene. A few more minutes passed, and still no one offered to give up. Moonlight Blast no longer waits. Now, the preliminaries begin. The names of Sasuke and Red Copper Armor appeared on the electronic screen in the upper right corner. The first battle was announced. Inuzuka Kiba looked at Sasuke and asked, "Can Sasuke win in this state?" Fungan said calmly, "If he can win, he won't lose even if he makes a little effort." A man with glasses and a mask on the side heard their conversation and came over. He said coldly, "Why should he win against the Red Copper Armor?" Fungan glanced at him, thought for a long time, and finally remembered. This person's name was Jien Maikung, and he was on the same team as Red Copper Armor. He ended up like his companions, becoming a stepping stone for others. Fungan spit out two words at will, strength. Jien Maikung snorted coldly, "HMPH. Are you newcomers and brats so arrogant?" Fungan glanced at him disdainfully and ignored him. "I was just stating the facts." Seeing Fungan's expression like this, Jien Maikung was very angry. "I bet on the Red Copper Armor to win. Do you dare to bet with me?" Bet. Fungan became interested as soon as he could. He liked guys who were in a hurry to give money. However, Fungan still looked calm on the surface. He asked calmly, "What are you betting on? How about a bet of 200,000 taels?" Fungan shook his head. "If you don't gamble, I have plenty of money." "What? Does anyone else think it's too much money?" Jien Maikung was stunned for a moment and looked at Fungan again. Seeing that he looks handsome and well-groomed, maybe this kid's family really has a lot of money and doesn't care about money. Now you can make a lot of money. He secretly rejoiced in his heart. Jien Maikung put away the smile on his lips and said, "What are you talking about betting on?" Fungan thought for a while. This guy's ability is that he can stretch his body at will. So he asked, "Can you only extend your limbs?" "Huh, 4 limbs. I don't know, I can extend all 5 limbs." After Jien Maikung finished speaking proudly, his expression changed. He asked in a low voice, "How do you know my ability?" "I remember not seeing you in the second exam. The information that Kabuto-senpai sold to me contains your information." Fungan knew that the two of them were on the same team as Yakushi Kabuto. Kabuto had already forfeited and left the game anyway, so it was up to him to say whatever he wanted. Hearing this, Jien Maikung's face turned pale and he cursed in his heart. "Kabuto, you're selling true information about your teammates to others." Fungan continued, "If Sasuke wins, how about you tell me your body's ability to stretch?" Ken Maikung showed hesitation, and glanced sideways at the Oto ninja in the stands opposite. Seeing that the sound ninja didn't notice the situation here. So he swallowed hard and whispered softly, "I agree, but if Red Copper Armor wins, you have to give me 500,000 taels." Fungan smiled and nodded. He would agree even if the other party wanted 10 million taels, but he couldn't lose anyway. Jien Maikung didn't even blink when he saw the 500,000 taels, feeling a little regretful. "If I had known, it would have been 1 million taels." Hateful. It's like losing 500,000 taels in vain. In his opinion, Fungan was the first big fat sheep to come to his door. On the ring, Sasuke and the copper-clad man threw shurikens at each other to test. Suddenly, Sasuke seized the flaw, stepped on the shoulder sockets of the Red Copper Armor, and locked his arms tightly in his arms. Naruto in the stands cheered, "Awesome." Little Sakura also smiled happily. Sasuke is going to win. Jien Maikung glanced at them disdainfully. "Idiot, he is not as weak as you think." The red copper armor, which had been locked and unable to move just now, suddenly resumed action. He punched Sasuke hard in the chest and took the opportunity to break out of Sasuke's lock. Sasuke got up from the ground with a painful expression. What's going on? I suddenly lost all strength. He recalled that the other party had been fighting in close combat with him, with his hands on his body from time to time. Sasuke gasped, "Did you suck my chakra? Haha, did you just find out now?" The copper-clad man wearing black sunglasses chuckled, rushed in front of Sasuke, held his head down, and used the ability to absorb chakra. It's over. Seeing this scene in front of him, Jian Maikang couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. "Boy, are you ready for the 500,000 tails?" Fungan shook his head slightly and said calmly, "Just watch for a while." Fungan, who knew that Sasuke was about to explode, didn't panic at all. Jian Maikang mocked contemptuously. "Ha, I won't shed tears until I see the coffin. So what if we watch it for a while? Can he still fight back?" Ken Maikang looked at Sasuke, who was still suppressed by the red copper armor, and saw no possibility of resistance. Even Jonin present has a solemn look on his face. "You are a brat, do you understand?" Feng An frowned slightly. "Your words are too shabby." Seeing Feng An's angry look, Jian Maikang snorted coldly. "When you give me 500,000 taels, I will naturally shut up." A red copper armored hand pinched Sasuke's forehead. "Kid, if you don't admit defeat, you will be sucked alive by me and die." Sasuke responded in a cold tone. "You give up, or I will beat you to death." "Shameless talk." The red copper armor shouted angrily, no longer holding back, and increased the speed of absorbing chakra. Sasuke's body instantly became weak. Little Sakura shouted worriedly, "Sasuke!" The consciousness that was on the verge of confusion suddenly woke up for a moment as she shouted. Sasuke exploded instantly and kicked the red copper armor away. The kicked away red copper armor patted the dust on his clothes and said with a gloomy face, "You will die by my hands soon." He gathered chakra in his palm again and rushed towards Sasuke. Sasuke tried his best to dodge every slap. With his current physical condition, he would be completely incapacitated if he received one more blow. "Ha ha ha, why did you start dodging, you coward?" Sasuke carefully stared at every joint of the opponent to predict the opponent's attack direction. In the middle of the anxious fight, suddenly, a bright light flashed in Sasuke's eyes. Instantly disappeared from the sight of the red copper armor. "What?" Disappeared. Bang! Just when he was stunned, Sasuke kicked him on the chin from bottom to top, sending him flying high into the sky. Rock Lee, who was watching the game in the stands, was shocked. "This is my move, Shadow Dance Leaf. Can I sue Teacher Guy for copyright infringement?" Sasuke suddenly leapt into the sky, flying in tandem with the red copper armor that was stuck in the air and flying upside down. Lion Combo. Under the silky combo he performed, the red copper armor fell onto the ring and lost consciousness. Moonlight Gale squatted in front of red copper armor and found that he had expired. There is no need to confirm this anymore. Ahem, Uchiha Sasuke wins. Hateful. Jian Maikang in the stands looked at the red copper armor lying on the ground in disbelief. Fungan turned around and came to Jian Maikang and put his hand on his shoulder. "Don't you forget the bet." Jian Maikang glanced at the sound ninja in the distance with fear. Fungan moved her lips in his ear. "I know you are worried that Orochimaru will kill you, but if you don't tell me, I will tell the third Hokage that you are a spy sent to Konoha by Orochimaru." Jian Maikang was shocked when he heard this. "Why do you know this?" Even Anbu didn't know about him sneaking into Konoha to be a spy, but a kid actually pointed it out to him. "Come out with me." The two came to the stairs and found a corner where no one was. With everyone's eyes focused on Sasuke, no one cared if there were two people missing from the stands. Fungan said calmly, "Tell me the secret of your body." Jian Maikang repeatedly confirmed that there was no one else around. Then he took out a scroll from his arms and stuffed it into Feng An's arms, and whispered, "This is the scroll that Orochimaru-sama gave me. It records the methods used by the predecessors to practice this ability to extend limbs." After saying that, he left angrily. Feng An stared at his back. He knew that Kenmazumi would meet Kankuro in the next game and be beaten up by him. But it has nothing to do with him. The second game is Aburame Shino vs. Sak. When Feng An came back, Shino had already won the victory easily. As the electronic screen scrolls. In the third game, Kankuro vs Kenmazumi. As Ken Maikung entangled Kankuro's body, he discovered that Kankuro had been a puppet all along, and the puppet behind his back was Kankuro. Moonlight Hayate. In the third game, Kankuro wins. Game 4 Haruno Sakura vs. Yamanaka Ino. As soon as they entered the scene, the two began to bicker around Sasuke. Fungan looked at it and shook his head. After a long period of hair-pulling and friendship-breaking punches, both of them finally fell to the ground. The fifth game was against Temari. As expected, Tiantian was defeated by Temari. Game 6 Nara Shikamaru vs. Jin. Shikamaru won easily. Next is the seventh game. Inuzuka Kiba vs. Uzumaki Naruto. Before going on stage, Fungan walked up to Ya and said in a deep voice, "You have to be careful about Naruto's farts later. You said I would be defeated." Fungan nodded. Inuzuka Kiba showed his claws in anger. Then he turned to look at Hinata and complained. "Look what your Fungan said. He actually said I'm not as good as Naruto." Hinata immediately covered her face shyly and muttered to herself. "Ma family." Fungan, seeing that Hinata was trapped in her own erotic world again, she ignored his words. Inuzuka raised his teeth and jumped down angrily. "Naruto, get down here." In the stands, Asuma smiled at Yuhi Kurenai and said, "The boys from the Inuzuka family have a very high fighting spirit. How come these two hot-blooded idiots met together?" Yuhi Hong shook her head helplessly. She could already foresee the scene of Kiba and Naruto fighting, each shouting louder than the other. "Ha ha ha ha." Naruto laughed and jumped from the stands. With the announcement of the start of the Moonlight Blast, the battle between the two is about to break out. After a fierce fight, Inuzuka Kiba finally fell to Naruto's. "I was really defeated by a fart." Although Ya was very reluctant, his 100-fold sense of smell had made his brain unable to bear it any longer, and he passed out. Then he was carried away on a stretcher. At this time, Hinata felt Fungan's gaze. She turned her head and asked with a smile, "What's wrong?" Fungan shook his head. "It's okay." Etc. Hinata's eyes widened suddenly and she almost forgot something important. She jumped down from the stands, trotted all the way to Tooth who was being lifted up on a stretcher, and handed him the medicine for injuries that had been prepared. Then, she ran back quickly and said breathlessly, "I almost forgot the medicine I prepared for you. Do I have a share too?" Hinata responded and nodded shyly. Instantly, a warm current surged into Fungan's heart. The next 8 games are Hyuga Hinata vs Hyuga Neji. Following Moonlight Hayate's announcement, everyone looked sideways at Hinata and Neji and started talking. Kakashi said calmly, "Is this fate?" Seeing Hinata's nervous look, Fungan poked her cheek and said with a smile, "It's time to show your brother the results of your training these days." On the ring, Hyuga Neji crossed his arms in front of him and looked at Hinata coldly. "You are not suitable to be a ninja. You are kind, avoid disputes, and always cater to other people's ideas." Hinata heard his words and explained, "I just want to change myself, so." Hyuga Neji interrupted loudly, "The crane tail is the crane tail, and the character and abilities will not change." At this moment, Fungan quietly came up behind Naruto. Neji said ruthlessly to Hinata, "Just give up, you will never change yourself." Naruto was furious at this time, and the mouth release technique was already gathering at his throat. When he was about to activate the mouth escape technique, a big hand suddenly covered his mouth, sealing his mouth escape. He quickly opened his big hand, turned his head angrily and asked, "Who is it?" After seeing this person's face clearly, Naruto's expression softened slightly. He said slightly dissatisfied, "It turns out to be Fungan. Why did you suddenly cover my mouth?" Fungan smiled and said, "I haven't seen you for a long time. I want to say hello to you. He looks like this on the outside, but inside he is a different picture. I won't give you a chance to increase your favorability, and Hinata doesn't need anyone else to encourage her now." Hinata in the audience breathed a long sigh of relief, opened her eyes, and looked at Neji calmly. "I won't admit defeat." Snort. Neji stopped talking and rolled his eyes. The two rushed to the middle of the ring and quickly fought. They all belong to the Hyuga clan, and the moves they use, Gentle Fist, are very similar. Everyone in the stands looked at the similar movements of the two of them, and it was difficult to tell who was better. Tiantian and Rock Lee on the side were shocked and looked at the two people talking. Is Hinata so strong? Hasn't he always said that his sister is weak and not suitable to be a ninja? Not many people can compete with Neji like this, but I still think Neji will win. Only the two of them, who have been with Neji day and night, understand how terrifying Neji's strength is. Naruto's scalp was numb when he saw Hinata's fierce attack. Hinata is so awesome. Among those present, only Kakashi and Maplin, who had Sharingan, could tell that Hinata was at a disadvantage in the fight. Fungan said nothing and watched the battle between Hinata and Neji seriously. During the high-intensity fight between the two, Hinata's physical strength was clearly unable to keep up. As her movements slowed down for a moment, Neji suddenly clapped out her palm. Hinata had no time to block the palm and was instantly knocked several meters away. At this time, Neji frowned again and said coldly, "Just admit defeat, you can't win me." Hinata breathed heavily and wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. She looked straight at Neji with a steady gaze. "Brother Neji, I know the pain you have been enduring. I will let you recognize me. Besides you, there is also my father." Yuhi Kurenai saw this scene and murmured, "This is the first time I have seen Hinata's determined eyes." Sarutobi Asuma beside him said, "Is it okay to let it go like this?" Kurenai Yuhi frowned. She knew Asuma was hinting at something within the Hyuga clan. Problems with their clan and branch houses. If I try to stop her now, I can't do it, and that brat won't agree to it either. Shihihong shook her head and cast her gaze on Fungan. At this time, Fungan held his hands tightly on the railings of the stands and stared at the battle below. Neji in the audience frowned when he heard Hinata's words. "You have no idea how you, as a young lady of the Zong family, can possibly understand my pain." Hinata shook her head. "No, I understand that in the fate of the Zong family and the branch house, you are the most confused and painful person." "Shut up." Neji was angered by her words and rushed away angrily. Just as he was approaching Hinata, a powerful impact hit him, forcing him to slow down. This is... Neji rolled his eyes to see that the acupuncture point that was hit on the shoulder was blocked by chakra. His complexion changed drastically and his breathing became rapid. 8 trigrams air palm. When did you master it? The day before the official exam. Hinata answered Neji's doubts seriously. After seeing her use the 8 trigrams air palm, Fungan breathed a sigh of relief and let go of the railing. 2 palm prints suddenly appeared on it. Half a month before Yuhihong informed the Chunin of the exam, Fungan began to practice with Hinata. Finally, the day before the exam, Hinata understood 8 trigrams air palm, and at the same time Byakugan's ability changed from observing veins to being able to clearly observe acupuncture points. Hateful. Neji clenched his fists so hard that blood oozed out. He couldn't accept being surpassed by someone from the Zong family. But in the current situation, he knew that he had lost and there was no point in continuing to fight. Neji struggled and raised his hands. "I give up." Moonlight Gale asked in surprise, "Are you really, going to admit defeat?" Hyuga Neji ignored him, turned around and walked out of the ring. Moonlight Gale saw this and said, "Then I declare that Hyuga Hinata wins this match." There was a big wave among everyone instantly. How did she win? Why did he suddenly admit defeat? Just because of the inexplicable words the other party said. No matter how you look at it, he doesn't look like he's at a disadvantage. I don't understand. Yuri's red eyes twitched, her mouth opened slightly and she said, "She actually did it." Shaoli grabbed Neji, who was walking forward with his head lowered, and asked, "Why do you want to admit defeat?" Tiantian came over in confusion. "You won't let her just because she is your sister, will you?" Neji was silent, didn't speak, and didn't even turn towards them. Just when Shaoli wanted to ask something more, Might Guy appeared and grabbed Shaoli, shaking his head at him, "Leave him alone for a while." On the other side, Fungan held Hinata's little hand. "What do you want to eat tonight?" Hinata regained her shy look in front of Fungan. She flashed her beautiful eyes and whispered, "I want to eat roasted wild boar, is that okay?" "Of course you can. Even if you want to eat roasted red balls, I will quietly catch them and roast them." "Forget about roasting Akamaru, Inuzuka Kiba will be angry." In other words, if Tooth is not angry, do you really have the idea of roasting Akamaru and eating it? Hinata quickly waved her hands and shook her head. No, how could I? Just kidding with you. Fungan turned around and hugged Hinata into her arms, leaning close to her ear. My family, Hinata, is really changing in her own way. Hinata whispered and pressed her head against Fungan. She wants to gain Neji's approval, her father's approval, and Fungan's approval as well. At this moment, Fungan suddenly looked around. Seeing that the head didn't pop out suddenly, he breathed a sigh of relief. This time I actually started to understand. Shino adjusted his sunglasses. Are you looking for me? Hey, the guy holding his girlfriend above looks at the electronic screen. Is it you? A man shouted towards Fungan on the ring. At this moment, Fungan remembered that the qualifying round was not over yet. He looked up, and what was written on the electronic screen was his name, Fungan vs. Funami Yuta. He turned to Hinata and said, I'll hug you again later. Hinata blushed and nodded. Look, what does this say? Come back for a hug later. Can you consider the feelings of other people present? When other people in the stands heard what Fungan said, their back molars almost shattered. Fungan jumped down from the ring. Moonlight Gale coughed twice and said, now that everyone is here, let the battle begin. Funamixiong had grown impatient with waiting too early. Seeing that he had just gotten tired of having love with his little girlfriend before coming down, it made him even more irritated. Suffer death. Tsunami Yuta looked fierce, raised his kunai and rushed towards Fungan. Fungan raised his eyes and took a look. Good guy, you are more anxious than me. When Yuta Funami rushed over, Fungan jumped back suddenly. A cold light flashed in Yuta Funami's eyes. Let me see how you hide in the air. Hide? Do I still need to hide? Fungan, who was stuck in the air, quickly formed seals with his hands. Fire style function fire technique. Base. In an instant, 4 or 5 balls of flame wrapped the shuriken and flew towards Yuta Funami. At this time, Yuta Funami had just thrown his shuriken. What? The attacks I throw out are not as fast as the ninjutsu he wants to form. Yuta Funami's expression changed drastically. He quickly dodged backwards and formed seals at the fastest speed in his life. Mist Shinobi Technique. A faint white mist instantly appeared on the arena. Yuta Unami is hiding in it. Naruto's pupils suddenly dilated while watching the battle. He still remembered this technique. During the mission to the Land of Waves, Momochi Zabuza used the ninjutsu. If Kakashi had not been there, they would have died in the fog. However, before Naruto could use the mouth release technique, he added buffs to Kaide. Fungan was the first to break the opponent's moves. Wind style great breakthrough. He spit out super strong wind pressure from his mouth, blowing away the thick fog in an instant. There is no doubt that Yuta Funami's figure appears. At this time, he was leaning against the wall with a confused face. Is this the power of ninjutsu that genin can use? Just now, he took advantage of the thick fog and lurked next to Fungan with a kunai. Just when he was about to win the victory with one blow. In an instant, a strong wind blew away the thick fog, and at the same time, it also blew him against the wall behind. If the wind hadn't stopped, he would still be hanging on the wall. Fungan saw that he didn't seem to be injured at all, shook his head and sighed. Sure enough, my killing moves are still too few. After taking this exam, he discovered that although he was a grandmaster in all aspects, except for fists and kunai, he didn't seem to have any ninjutsu that could kill him in one blow. It's better to use your fists. Fungan rushed towards Yuta Funami quickly, as fast as a hummingbird flying close to the ground. Yuta Funami's eyes almost popped out when he saw his speed. He quickly clasped his hands together and shouted, I. At this time, Fungan was already in front of him. Admit defeat. Fungan punched out. Boom. A large hole suddenly opened in the wall, and the crack quickly spread upwards until it was 2 meters long and stopped. The shouting just now seemed to have exhausted all the strength of Yuta Funami's body. At this time, he was leaning against the wall and shaking all over. Fungan glared at him fiercely. Can you admit defeat more simply next time? I almost hit you on the head out of control. I survived. Yuta Funami, who was surviving the disaster, only felt a ringing in his ears, and he sat on the ground with an empty head. There was silence. Moonlight Gale, who was the first to react, said, Ahem, I declare Fungan the winner, ahem. Fungan's destructive power just now made Yugong Gale a little stunned. As he announced Fungan's victory, everyone reacted, and there was an uproar in an instant. Hiss, The power of this punch is too strong. The speed he formed the seal before was so fast that I could only see the afterimage. Little Sakura looked at Fungan with a complicated heart and murmured to herself, Fungan is so strong. Why can he be at the top of both ninjutsu and taijutsu? Rock Lee, who was watching the battle, also clenched his fists angrily. To have such strength and such a beautiful little girlfriend is really enviable. It's true, the talent and beauty of the man are a match made in heaven. Those who previously resented Fungan's dog abuse were no longer jealous. The strength he showed was far beyond the scope of their jealousy, and all they had in their eyes was admiration. Fungan flashed and came to Hinata's side. Have you been waiting for a long time? Let me give you a hug. He stretched out his arms and pulled Hinata into his arms. Hinata blushed and said at a loss, I'm not waiting. No, I'm waiting for you. No, no. The more she talked, the more confused she became, and the heat coming from her head became hotter and hotter. It looked like she could even cook eggs. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who was in the stands opposite, narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Fungan. Red hair, Uzumaki clan, he said calmly. Anko, do you have any information about the red-haired boy just now? Let me turn it over, Hokage-sama. Anko took out a bunch of ninja information materials and muttered as he flipped through them, Fungan. Fungan, she suddenly remembered that the red-haired kid who claimed to have killed Orochimaru was named Fungan. Sarutobi Hiruzen heard her sudden gesture and asked, what happened to him? Anko shook his head quickly and said nonchalantly. I met him before in the Death Forest. He killed Orochimaru, a grass ninja disguised as a ninja. Because I went after Orochimaru later, I forgot to report to you. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded. It doesn't matter. As she quickly flipped through the pages, she finally saw Fungan in the last few pieces of information. Hokage-sama, it is recorded in his information that he is an orphan. When he was in the ninja school, he often failed in his grades and barely passed the exams. He did not have a teacher to lead him after graduation. Judging from the registration information of 9D level missions he completed, he acted with Class 8. Class 8, is he the child Yuhi Hong mentioned before? He actually has such power. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a puff of his pipe and narrowed his eyes slightly. I understand, please step back. Anko lowered his head and said, okay, Master Hokage. The favored white-eyed genius admitted defeat, and then it was revealed that Fungan's power far surpassed that of Genin, which made everyone's emotions even higher. I heard there was still a lot of discussion around me. Moonlight Gale coughed a few times and said, ahem, everyone, the game continues. As the electronic screen scrolls again, Gaara and Rock Lee's names floated above. A circle of fine sand rolled up in the ring, and Gaara's figure appeared on the ring. He looked coldly at Xiao Li in the stands. Speed down. Kakashi put his hand on his chin and murmured, San Shunshin. Moonlight Hayate said, the 10th game is Gaara vs. Rock Lee. Ahem, Rock Lee candidates please come on. What I saw written on the electronic screen was not Akamichi Choji. Akamichi Choji shouted excitedly, great, it's not me. The people around him looked at him with disdain, but said nothing. None of them wanted to meet Gaara. They had seen Gaara's strength and cruelty to some extent in the Forest of Death. When Rock Lee was getting ready to go down, Might Guy leaned into his ear and said, maybe no one noticed. The gourd on his back is very suspicious, be careful. Xiao Li's face showed a look of realization. Oh. As expected of Teacher Guy. He quickly took out a small notebook and took notes. Forget it. I don't have time to take notes for you during a battle, idiot. Oh, I got it. Rock Lee also copied what Might Guy said in a small notebook. There seemed to be two flames burning in Might Guy's eyes. He shouted emotionally, Yoshi. Come on, Xiao Li. Okay, Teacher Guy. Rock Lee put away his notebook, jumped over the railing and jumped down. Gaara crossed his arms in front of his chest and said coldly, it's so slow. Both sides finally took the field, ready to fight. Hinata looked at Fungan and asked, can he beat Gaara? Fungan shook his head. It's difficult, although Xiao Li himself is very strong. In the direction of the plot, Gaara narrowly defeated Xiao Li. It was also after this that Xiao Li had a big problem with his body. The so-called cheating for 6 minutes and the ban for 600 episodes came from. If nothing unexpected happens, Rock Lee will lose his left arm and leg here. Moonlight Gale. Now, the 10th qualifier, cough, begins. Yo! Rock Lee excitedly rushed to Gaara and launched an extremely ferocious attack on him. However, Gaara still stood coldly, motionless. The sand in the gourd alone blocked Xiao Li's attack. After a few moves, facing Rock Lee's attack, Gaara didn't move even one step. With sand alone, Gaara is in an invincible position. Gaara said coldly, "Is this the extent? Let me be more excited." Might Guy stepped on the ground, and the ground instantly shattered into a spider web shape. "Lee, use that." Rock Lee jumped on the sculpture's fingers and said. "But Mr. Guy, didn't you say that it can only be used to protect more important people?" Might Guy gave him his signature flashing smile. "It doesn't matter. I approve." Yoshi. Rock Lee sits on the sculptural fingers and unties the weights tied around his legs. Everyone in the stands looked at it and shook their heads. "Are you carrying something heavy? Boring. What kind of useless practice is this?" Tamari on the side said proudly. "Hey, I just removed some weights, how can I keep up with Gaara-san's speed?" Fungan heard everyone's discussion and shook his head slightly. "Soon you won't feel that way anymore." Boom. The moment the heavy object dropped by Xiao Li hit the ground, it stirred up dust 4 to 5 meters high, and a deep hole was made in the floor. Everyone who had just spoken was shocked. Can this still be called a heavy object? Might Guy shouted excitedly. "Youth must be burned. Go ahead, Lee." Oh, Rock Lee's eyes burned with 2 flames, and he galloped towards Gaara. Boom, bang. In a very short period of time, Xiao Li punched and kicked. Gaara's sand gradually failed to keep up. A panicked look appeared on Gaara's face for the first time. Boom. Before Sanako could react, Xiao Li kicked Gaara in the face. Click. Gaara's broken face fell off piece by piece, revealing a brand new face inside. Gaara still said coldly, "Is that all? In that case." Xiao Li pulled off the bandage on his hand and ran around Gaara at a very fast speed. Gaara still crossed his arms and looked at each other coldly, seemingly not showing the slightest interest in Xiao Li. As Xiao Li ran wildly, Shazi obviously couldn't keep up with his speed. Good chance. He suddenly attacked and kicked Gaara in the chin. Then use a set of anti-gravity kicks to kick Gaara high into the air. Biao Lianhua. The bandage on Gaara's hand was wrapped tightly, and the two of them smashed towards the ground at extremely high speeds. Suddenly a cloud of dust several feet high was stirred up. Did that watermelon head win? After the dust dispersed, it was revealed that Gaara was only a broken sand clone, and the real body appeared behind Rock Lee. The calmness on his face was replaced by a look of madness. Kill 8 sisters-in-law. In an instant, sand surged out like a torrent of sea water. At this time, Xiao Li's body was extremely taxed after using lotus flower. Even if he saw Gaara's attack, he no longer had the speed to dodge it. Boom. Xiao Li was hit hard against the wall by an attack like a sea of sand. Gaara looked crazy. Is that all? For a time, Xiao Li was hit by Gaara's sand and was bruised all over his body. The pink-haired little Sakura on the ring was horrified and couldn't bear to ask, "Why don't you admit defeat, Xiao Li? If you continue fighting like this, you will die." Might Guy raised the corners of his mouth and looked at Xiao Li appreciatively. "He won't give in. Just watch, he will dance again." "Teacher Guy, thank you." Xiao Li stood up, his momentum changing instantly. The third door, the living door, is open. As the chakra broke through the wall of the living door, a huge amount of blue chakra leaked out of the body and surrounded him. Little Sakura was shocked. What kind of ninjutsu is this? Kakashi lifted up his forehead protector to reveal the 3-tomo Sharingan with his left eye. This is not ninjutsu, but taijutsu, 8 inner gates. 8 inner gates. What are they? Kakashi explained solemnly. On the chakra-flowing meridian system, there are 8 acupuncture points. The door of opening, the door of rest, the door of life, the door of injury, the door of dew, the door of scenery, the door of surprise, and the door of death. These 8 acupuncture points have wall layers that usually limit the flow of chakra, but Lotus Blossom will break through this limit and release more than 10 times the power. But the 8 inner gates are extremely taxing on the body. When you open the 8 gates to gain strength, you will also lose your life. After saying that, Kakashi gave Might Guy a deep look. You actually taught him that dangerous technique. Guy, what are you thinking? Not enough. Rock Lee roared angrily, and the chakra in his body struck the fourth gate again, damaging it. The fourth door, opened the injury door. Then he didn't stop for a moment and just kept going. The fifth door, Doomin opens. His veins popped out, his exposed skin turned from fair to red, and his eyes turned white. Taking Xiao Li's whole body as the midpoint, an even more amazing green chakra breath bursts out. Base. Rock Lee's high-speed movement is comparable to the body flicker technique, far exceeding the speed of Sand's automatic defense. He instantly appeared in front of Gaara and shattered Gaara's sand armor with one kick. Gaara's face was full of anxiety, so fast. Xiao Li grabbed the white ribbon on Gaara's body and exerted force suddenly. Gaara, who was falling rapidly, was pulled back again. The game will end with this move. Veins popped up all over Rock Lee's body, and he punched Gaara hard on Gaara's life with all his strength. Rarenka. Under Xiao Li's fierce blow, Gaara's body fell suddenly like a meteor. Boom. There was a loud bang. Gaara smashed a deep hole into the ground, sending up dust several feet high, and half of the arena was destroyed. Wait for the dust to clear. Gaara was breathing heavily as she lay among the rubble of the ring. Xiao Li also collapsed on the ground due to the extreme decline in physical function due to the burden of 8 inner gates. Fungan glanced at Might Guy and frowned. From Might Guy's solemn expression, it can be seen that he still has not made up his mind whether to stop this game. If this continues, Xiao Li will be half disabled. Fungan used the body flicker technique, and after the air trembled slightly, he appeared next to Might Guy. Teacher Guy, if you don't stop the game, you will regret it. Might Guy, who was hesitating whether to stop the game or not, shrank his pupils. What do you mean? After Fungan finished speaking, he turned and left. Although he was determined to save Rock Lee, he knew that Rock Lee was determined. If he rashly calls to stop the game, he will only be resented by him, and his relationship with him is not good enough to make the other party hold a grudge and save him. It's just a bonus point for the filter in the previous life. It's enough to remind the hesitant Might Guy. The subsequent choice will still be left to Might Guy himself. At this time, the sand on the ring had turned into a big hand and grabbed Xiao Li, who was struggling to crawl. Might Guy gritted his teeth and his body trembled. Sand immediately wrapped around Rock Lee's left hand and left leg. Go to hell. Gaara shook her hand. Chi. Sand-bound coffin. Just a second before Gaara used his killing move, Might Guy instantly appeared on the ring and struck down with a palm. The sand that covered half of Xiao Li's body was instantly blown away by the wind of his palm. Xiao Li, who was covered in scars, reluctantly got up from the ground. Guy, Teacher Guy, why? Might Guy hugged Xiao Li and said, Li, you are my most precious subordinate, and I will not allow you to stop here. He knew that even if Mr. Guy didn't interrupt the game, he would have lost. Xiao Li, who was held by Might Guy, had tears in his eyes. Teacher Guy, I am so unwilling. Ahem. Moonlight Hayate coughed twice, not sure if he was really sick or coughing to lighten the atmosphere. I declare the 10th qualifier, Gaara wins. There was silence. There were no cheers or boos from the crowd. Although the result was within their expectations, they thought Rock Lee would lose to Gaara before, but the process was beyond their expectations. Konkuro and Tamari, who were full of confidence before, no longer look at Rock Lee with contempt. As the electronic screen scrolled again, the names of Akamichi Choji and Toss appeared. Moonlight Hayate walked to the middle of the ring. Now the 11th match, Akamichi Choji vs. Toss, begins. After the medical staff helped Rock Lee away, Might Guy came to Fungan's side. He said with a serious expression, thank you. After he blocked Gaara's attack, he realized how clearly the other party had used that move with clear killing intent. Without Fungan's reminder, he might have had irreversible consequences. Rather than Xiao Li proving himself in this battle, he wanted Xiao Li to go further. Fungan smiled at Might Guy. The main reason is because you feel sorry for Xiao Li, otherwise you wouldn't have stopped him. Might Guy shook his head. If you hadn't awakened me, I would have allowed Xiao Li to implement his so-called forbearance. After being stopped, I began to feel annoyed at myself for being hesitant at the time. How could I bet Li's future on this battle? Fungan scratched his head and didn't know what to say when he saw Might Guy's serious expression. Might Guy then said, I saw before that you seem to be very talented in physical skills. Do you want to practice physical skills with me? After hearing what he said, Fungan showed a thoughtful expression. In the last game, I was still complaining that I didn't have a powerful way to kill enemies with one hit, and now it's here so soon. Taijutsu was a path he never envisioned. But it seems to suit me now. Fungan nodded and smiled. Okay, teacher Guy, I'll give you more advice from now on. Yoshi. Might Guy laughed and conjured up a green tights of the same style and handed it to Fungan. Meeting gift. Fungan subconsciously took a step back. He didn't even see where Might Guy took out the tights. If he hadn't known that Might Guy had a summoning beast, he would have thought that he had signed a summoning contract with tights. Fungan waved his hand quickly. It's so inappropriate to accept a gift when we meet for the first time. Might Guy took a step forward and said excitedly. Only my approved disciples can obtain my unique set of tights. Unique. So what is Rock Lee wearing? What's that in your hand? Fungan complained crazily in his heart. In the end, he accepted the green tights despite Might Guy's hard work. Because he learned from Might Guy that even Neji and Tiantian have this suit. It's just that they hid the tights early. Fungan agreed very much with their approach and thought that after the game was over, he would stuff the tights in the cupboard and eat ashes when he got home. In the 11th qualifier, Toss 1. As Moonlight Gale announced, the electronic screen flashed again. The names of Shui Yu and Wachang Yoshiko gradually emerged. Seeing Shui Yu's name appear on the screen, Fungan and others looked at Shui Yu standing aside. Come on, come on, come on, come on sister. I will. Shui Yu smiled and walked aside. Aburame Shino on the side adjusted his glasses. Come on. A woman named Wachang Yoshiko jumped from the stands and stood on the ring. After waiting for more than 10 seconds, Shui Yu had not arrived on the ring. Seeing this, Yugong Hayate shouted towards the stands, Player Shui Yu, please come on. Coming, Shui Yu responded. I saw Shui Yu slowly walking out from the stairs and onto the ring. Seeing her coming down the stairs, Wachang Yoshiko showed undisguised ridicule on her face. It turns out I took the stairs. Moonlight Hayate scratched her head in embarrassment. Everyone in the stands also frowned. Why is she taking the stairs? Isn't she a ninja? Idiot, can he take the Chunin exam if he is not a ninja? She can't even jump this high, but can she pass through the forest of death? She is on the same team as Fungan. Hung Win, I said she is so weak, how come she doesn't have any injuries on her body? Fungan glanced at the ninjas lightly, and the voices of discussion disappeared instantly. Seeing that both parties were in place, Moonlight Gale said. Now the 12th qualifier, Shui Yu vs. Wachang Yoshiko, officially begins. Shui Yu unhurriedly opened the backpack on her waist, took out the shuriken and held it in her hand. Seeing her such slow speed, Wachang Yoshiko's face became more mocking. She said sarcastically, it's easy to cut your pretty face in battle, so just give up. The meaning of her words is to tell Shui Yu that as a person who relies on your face to pass the level, you must be self-aware, otherwise your face will be at risk. Shui Yu said calmly, since you think your face is important, then I will cut your face. Seeing that the other party had no intention of giving up, Wachang Yoshiko stopped talking. He threw out a few shurikens casually. Shui Yu also threw out her shuriken and knocked her shuriken away. The two of them continued to test each other with each move. I am bored. I don't want to see it anymore. After everyone saw several fierce battles in a row, they were inevitably a little tired of fighting at this level. Fungan and others have never seen Shui Yu use any ninjutsu. When they trained together, they basically practiced kunai and shuriken. Funghua, is your sister really not good at anything? Fungan looked at Funghua aside and asked. Although Shui Yu said it herself, Fungan still didn't believe it. Her sister had blood inheritance limits, and her sister might be hiding. Funghua shook her head. No, if so, did my sister throw the shuriken very accurately? Fungan was speechless for a while. What's the point of throwing it away? Should the other side stand still and let you? Maybe she really doesn't have anything good at it. In the 11th qualifying match, Shui Yu won. The sound of moonlight and wind came. Fungan was stunned. What happened? Can I tell the winner just by turning my head? He quickly turned to look at the arena. I saw Yoshiko Hanachung with a shuriken stuck in her head being carried on a stretcher and sent away. She looked like she was bleeding profusely, which was probably because she was cold. There is a man next to him, who is Fungan's previous rival Yuta Funami. At this time, he was crying behind Wachangjazi, who was carried away. Kako, Kako, how can I live without you? Fungan looked at Hinata, who had been watching the battle. Hinata, did you see them fighting just now? Why did Shui Yu suddenly win? Hinata nodded. While you were talking to Kazuka, Hanashiro Yoshiko used the Mist Shinobi technique, and Yukizuki swung a shuriken into the fog and won. Ah, can I take back what I said now? The throwing of the shuriken probably, maybe, might actually be useful. As Moonlight Gale declared victory, the electronic screen lit up again. Kazuhana's name and another Kojira's name appeared on the screen without any surprise. Because there were only two of them present who had not yet played against each other. Fungan smiled and said, don't lose too miserably. Who will lose? Baga. Funghua glanced at him and jumped directly from the stands. The last qualifying match, Funghua vs. Kojira, begins. The two started testing each other with shurikens. Fungan told her before that the special nature of the blood succession limit would be coveted by others. Although she didn't think it would be the case, she still listened to his words. Little Sakura stretched. Both these two scenes are so boring, I feel sleepy watching them. Kakashi behind her said indifferently, isn't your fight with Ino like this too? Hearing what Kakashi said, little Sakura's face turned red. Kakashi then said earnestly, the most important thing in a ninja battle is intelligence, so testing first and then fighting is a real ninja battle. Naruto interrupted. Ah, what about Fungan? Kakashi looked helpless. His strength is crushing. Then it seems that the influence of intelligence is not great. In the previous battles, Shino fought against Zack, and Kankuro fought against Kenmazumi. Didn't you see anything in those two battles? Weren't those two games also crushing? I think they won easily. What if Zack knew that Shino was a secret insect? What if Kenmazumi knew that Kankuro's true form was a puppet? Kakashi held his forehead weakly. Oh, you idiot, are you just here to watch the fun? Naruto laughed and said, hey, little Sakura is watching the fun too, she's an idiot too. Naruto, it's none of my business. Little Sakura punched Naruto in the head. Naruto grimaced in pain. On the other side of the ring. The ring is covered in thick white mist as Kojira uses the Mist Shinobi technique. Seeing that it's Mist Shinobi technique again, some people couldn't help but complain. Why is it Mist Shinobi technique again? Are the three of them the same teacher? Don't tell me, it's true, the three of them are in a group. All right. Funghua looked at the thick fog in front of her, concentrated hard and was ready. Without Fungan's amazing wind style, Mist Shinobi technique is actually a very difficult ninjutsu to deal with. The user's field of vision is blocked, so she doesn't know where the opponent will attack or use ninjutsu, and she will always be one step behind if she wants to deal with it. This is why the Mist Shinobi technique remains fresh in Naruto's memory. Base. Several shurikens came from the side. Funghua knocked them away with kunai in time, and threw the shurikens in the direction of the flying shurikens at the same time. Then quickly retreat to the wall, which at least prevents the opponent from going around behind. The corners of Kojira's mouth slightly curved in the thick fog. It's time. He threw his shuriken at Funghua, and then quickly formed seals with his hands. Earth-style hard beheading technique. As the shuriken flew out, he also rushed from the ground to Funghua's feet at extremely fast speeds. As soon as Kazuka dodged the shuriken, Kojira was already lurking at her feet. Funghua's expression changed, and she instantly noticed something abnormal underground. She quickly formed the seal. Ice release Bingyan Tangwu. Instantly an ice barrier appeared under her feet. Kojira hit the wall of the ice barrier and quickly emerged from the ground. Take advantage of the opponent's thick fog to clear up, and fight quickly. Funghua did not hesitate too much and quickly formed the seal. Ice escape ice prison technique. The ice barrier instantly changed its shape and sealed Kojira within it. The ice barrier began to gradually shrink. Kojira gritted his teeth and quickly formed the seal. Earth-style rock house collapse. A palm slapped on the ice barrier. The ice barrier trembled faintly, and with his second palm strike, a hole suddenly appeared in the ice barrier. He fled outside in a hurry. However, as soon as he poked his head out, a kunai was clamped around his neck. Seeing this, Kojira stopped struggling. His chakra amount is not large, and his body is already looking tired at this time, and it will be difficult to win if he continues to fight. I surrender. When the thick fog on the field cleared, everyone saw Funghua holding a kunai on Kojira's neck. Moonlight Hayate said, I declare the final qualifier, Kazuhana wins. Wait for Chi Funghua to return to the stage. Hinata and others were happy for her. Only Fungan looked at the puddle of water on the ground and guessed that she had probably used ice escape. However, Fungan still congratulated her on winning and did not dampen her mood. Immediately, Sarutobi Hiruzen called everyone to gather below. The third official exam will be held in a month. I hope that you will be able to show your fullest state and present a hearty battle to the princes and famous figures from all over the world. Thank you for your hard work, everyone, go back and rest. Just when Fungan and others also left with the flow of people, Sarutobi Hiruzen puffed on his pipe. Fungan, come here. After everyone left, only Sarutobi Hiruzen and Maplin were left in the venue. Sarutobi Hiruzen said with a kind smile, I saw your duel, you were pretty good. Fungan smiled and said, thank you, Mr. Hokage, for the compliment. Neither arrogant nor impetuous, and his character is very good. Fungan nodded on the surface, but inwardly scolded him for being an old fox who beat around the bush. As he kept nodding wildly, he finally got through Sarutobi Hiruzen's continuous rainbow farts. I saw Sarutobi Hiruzen, who had been smiling lovingly just now, straightened up. Fungan, do you know the will of fire? You, uncle, I want to cook roasted wild boar for Hinata. Fungan said without any fluctuation on his face, I know something. Sarutobi Hiruzen patted Fungan on the shoulder, and there was a hint of a hero in his twilight years in his old eyes. With the will of fire, wherever the leaves are flying, the fire will continue to grow. The fire will not go out, but will continue to illuminate the village and allow new leaves to sprout and grow. And you are the new leaf. Hearing Sarutobi Hiruzen's words, Fungan gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. Otherwise, he was afraid of being punched in his hypocritical old pie face. He himself acquiesced in certain things Danzo did, and he was really not afraid that the fire would be too big and burn him to death. But he is indeed about to die. Sarutobi Hiruzen noticed Fungan's clenched fists that were shaking and his eyes widened, and he felt sad. He can actually get into the mood with just one sentence. His will of fire puts even me to shame. Okay, I saw it right. I have seen the will of fire you inherited. Ah, how about you take a closer look? Sarutobi Hiruzen waved his hand. No need to look any further. Politeness, quality, and strength are all manifestations of your will of fire. Join Anbu and be my direct subordinate. After pulling for so long, the chicken feet are finally exposed, right? Fungan said calmly, I'm just a genin who just graduated from ninja school. The important thing is that you have just graduated. How can I brainwash you and transmit the will of fire when you are older? Sarutobi Hiruzen coughed slightly and said, the Chunin exam is based on comprehensive ability, and is finally determined by the Hokage. I am very satisfied with your ability. You are now a Chunin. Fungan felt even more contempt for him. Wasn't it because you deceived Hitaki Kakashi, who was a teenager at the time, into Anbu like this? Thank you Hokage-sama for your recognition. Now that I have become a Chunin, I will work hard for Jonin at this moment. Fungan made an extremely serious look. Very good. Sarutobi Hiruzen had a cigarette pipe in the corner of his mouth, with a look of relief on his face. Lord Hokage, I can't wait to practice. Every second I spend not practicing is an insult to the will of fire. After finishing speaking, Fungan appeared at the exit with a body flicker technique and turned around to leave without looking back. He also wants to roast wild boar for Hinata. Only a stiff-faced Sarutobi Hiruzen was left. After Chi Fungan's figure disappeared, an old man carrying a cane and wrapped in bandages slowly walked out from behind the sculpture on the side, Shimura Danzo. Hiruzen, are you confused? Let such a brat join Anbu. Sarutobi Hiruzen was not angry when he heard this. He said calmly, haven't you been adding manpower to Anbu recently? I'm looking for people who are loyal to Konoha. I am loyal to Konoha with you Danzo. After hearing Sarutobi Hiruzen's unabashed words, Shimura Danzo walked out of the venue with a gloomy face. When he reached the exit, he turned his back to Sarutobi Hiruzen and said in a low voice, Hiruzen, you will regret it. Danzo, don't forget that I am the Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded at him unceremoniously. The two men opened their eyes slightly at the same time, with dissatisfaction with each other written in their eyes. You don't have much longer to live, Hiruzen. Danzo was secretly angry in his heart. He only paused for a second and then left with a cold face. At dusk, Fungan found Hinata and the others at the training ground. Yuhi Hong and others really stabbed a big wild boar. The difference between this time and the dry one last time is that this time there are a bunch of seasonings and light snacks. Inuzuka Kiba's keen sense of smell was the first to detect Fungan's presence. He turned around excitedly and shouted, "You're finally here. I've been waiting for you." Fungan. Then everyone turned to look at Fungan, the joy in their eyes showing their true feelings without any concealment. Fungan felt warm in his heart. Is this what it feels like to have family? It's nice to have family. That's awesome. After Fungan ran over excitedly, he realized that everyone was gathered around waiting for him to roast the big wild boar with fire style. Funghua said, "We specially leave the most critical part to you, are you touched? I'm so convinced to have you." Fungan looked at everyone's expectant big eyes and shook his head helplessly. Then they made a hand seal and spit out a small ball of fire from their mouth, igniting the branches and firewood they had prepared. In this test, he became more comfortable controlling the chakra, and now he can no longer accidentally create a huge one. While everyone was eating snacks, they curiously asked Sarutobi Hiruzen why he left Fungan alone. "What did Master Hokage tell you?" "I didn't say anything. They just told me to skip the exam and become a chunin directly. They also asked me to join Anbu, but I refused. What I hate the most is going through the back door." Funghua gave him a contemptuous look. "Lord Hokage personally invited you to join Anbu, and you still refused. Nonsense, who believes it?" She turned to look at Inuzuka Kiba. "Do you believe it?" Ya shook his head quickly. "I don't believe it." Fungan shrugged. He knew that even if he told the truth, they wouldn't believe him. The image Sarutobi Hiruzen created in their minds was very majestic, and there was no way he could be the person to do this. After everyone had eaten and drank, they chatted for a while and then left. Under the darkness, only Fungan and Hinata were left. "Is this really helpful for spiritual practice?" Hinata blinked, squirming a little. Fungan said seriously, "Really, I won't lie to you." Hinata nodded slightly. "Is it true that you said it won't hurt?" Fungan nodded and said patiently, "There may be a little bit of pain, but it's part of the path to spiritual practice." "Okay, come on." Hinata gritted her teeth. Although she was extremely reluctant, she still obeyed Fungan's instructions. She stretched out her white little hand and touched Fungan's strong skin. Hiss, it's so cold. As soon as he felt the coldness on Hinata's hand, Fungan couldn't help but exclaimed, "How about forget it?" Fungan looked at her seriously. "Sorry Hinata, only you can help me with this training." Seeing Fungan's repeated emphasis, Hinata knew that he was serious. "Then I'm here." Hinata narrowed her eyes, turned her head, grabbed Fungan's arm with both hands, and pulled her back hard. Click. Fungan's arm suddenly made a sound of dislocation. Hinata's expression changed and she let go of her little hand in panic. "Fungan, why don't we forget it? The practice method recorded in this scroll always feels unusual." Fungan grinned and shook his head. "Go ahead, Hinata. Expansion jutsu is a family secret technique that he cannot obtain, and there is no way he can miss Kenmazumi's ability. He already has the ability to activate cells and harden his body. If he gains Kenmazumi's ability, he will be able to reach the top of the ninja world." The two of them worked in vain all night. Chapter 51. The next day, in the yard of Hinata's house, Hyuga Hiyashi walked around with a frown on his face. He just learned from Yuhi's red mouth that Hinata and Neji met in the preliminary round. When Yuhi Kurenai learned that he didn't know about the matter, she didn't tell him the result of the game, saying that since Neji and Hinata didn't mention it, it wasn't appropriate for her. This tortured Hyuga Hiyashi extremely uncomfortable. Although he was convinced that Neji would win, he didn't know why he could feel a sense of expectation from Yuhi Kurenai's expression. It's like buying a lottery ticket even though you know you won't win, and you just want to know the result. It's been a while. Hinata, who had just woken up, washed up, rubbed her groggy eyes and walked out. As soon as I came out of the house, I saw Hyuga Hiyashi walking around in the yard. "Father," she asked doubtfully. "Father, what are you doing?" Finally woke up. Hearing Hinata's voice, Hyuga Hiyashi frowned slightly. He wasted a long time waiting for Hinata to get up. He knew that Chunin must be very tired during the exam, and he couldn't bear to disturb his daughter's rest, but he was anxious, so he just wandered around here. Hyuga Hiyashi calmed down his emotions and came to Hinata. Hinata, I heard that you and Neji met in the qualifiers. So you already know. Hinata scratched her face. Hearing Hinata's usual tone, Hyuga Hiyashi's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and the trace of expectation he had before sank to the bottom. Sure enough, Neji won as expected. Then I thought of Neji's hatred for the clan and the branch house system. Hyuga Hiyashi asked worriedly. Neji didn't hurt you, did he? Hinata shook her head. No, brother Neji has given up. Ah, that's good. ? Hyuga Hiyashi, who had just turned around, widened his eyes and turned around again. What did you say? Neji gave up. You mean you won your duel? Right. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned. Usually when Hinata and Neji were training, he was there to watch, and Neji would show murderous intent from time to time. It is enough to show his hatred for the Hyuga clan and the branch house system. This time Neji encountered an opportunity to prove to outsiders that even though he was a branch house, he could still defeat the Zong family. Why did Neji admit defeat? Could it be that he finally agreed with such a system? Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes were a little lonely. His views on Hyuga's system were shaken when Hizashi died. However, it is impossible for him to change such a deep-rooted system. When it comes to the survival of the Hyuga clan, his status as clan leader is even less impressive compared to those of the elders. Why did Neji admit defeat? Was he afraid of hurting you? Hinata's eyes darkened. Even if I win, my father will subconsciously think that brother Neji is trying to trick me, right? After all, in previous sparring sessions, I was always the loser. My father never had any expectations for me, right? But I also want to be recognized by my father, even just once. Father, actually brother Neji didn't let me this time. Hinata raised her head and looked directly at her father, Hiyashi, with tears in her eyes. Seeing Hinata's red eyes, Hyuga Hiyashi instantly understood what his daughter's brief words were saying. My heart suddenly softened. Ever since he put all his focus on training Hanabi, it has been a long time since he saw Hinata holding back her tears. Hyuga Hiyashi slowly squatted down and wiped away the water drops that Hinata couldn't hold back. He said in a soft tone, I asked why I haven't seen the little crybaby for a long time. It turns out that he has grown into a big crybaby. He always frowned, but this time he relaxed his brows and showed a kind smile. Hinata couldn't hold back her emotions any longer and sobbed as she hugged her father's neck. The father and daughter hugged each other for a long time, and Hinata finally calmed down. Can you tell Dad how you won Neji? Hinata nodded and wiped the bubbles from her nose. He narrated the battle and the conversation between the two of them to Hyuga Hiyashi. At the end of the hearing, Hinata used 8 trigrams air palm. Hyuga Hiyashi's hands holding Hinata's shoulders were shaking a little. He asked emotionally, you mean you've mastered the 8 trigrams air palm? When did you master it? Let me see. Hinata nodded. Roll your eyes. She then opened her Byakugan and condensed chakra in her palms. He slapped a potted plant in the yard from afar. Suddenly a huge force rushed out. The branch hit by the high-strength chakra block was directly broken into 2 pieces. It's actually the 8 trigrams air palm. Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes widened and he murmured. No wonder Neji throws in the towel. The gentle fist of the Hyuga clan is very strong in melee combat and can block the enemy's chakra through acupuncture and Byakugan. But once long-distance combat occurs, the advantage will be lost. Byakugan, who has super long sight range, can only fight in close quarters, just like using an 8-power mirror to fight the enemy with a bayonet. The 8 trigrams air palm is a taijutsu developed to compensate for the long-distance attack methods of the Hyuga clan. A method of using one's own chakra to gather in the palm of the hand to shoot gentle fist from a distance. Hyuga Hiyashi asked hesitantly, are you also self-taught? He never remembered that he taught Hinata 8 trigrams air palm, because Hinata didn't even master 8 trigrams 64 palms, so how could she teach her the more difficult 8 trigrams air palm? No, father. Hinata shook her head. Hearing her answer, Hyuga Hiyashi frowned. You're not self-taught. Then how do you know this technique? A large part of the reason why Hyuga Neji is called the Byakugan genius is because he learned 8 trigrams, 64 palms and revolving heaven by himself. Under the system of the Hyuga clan, branch houses are not qualified to learn this technique. This also means that even if he is a branch house, but he has learned these 2 techniques, the elders of the clan cannot do anything to him. It's Fungan. It's a move that Fungan taught me when I was practicing. Hinata thought about it and told Hyuga Hiyashi. What? Fungan, he knows 8 trigrams air palm. Hyuga Hiyashi was shocked. It should be possible, but I haven't seen Fungan use it. During her practice, she only listened to Fungan explain the principles to her, but never saw Fungan personally demonstrate how to use it. Hyuga Hiyashi looked thoughtful. Although Gentle Fist 8 trigrams palms is a secret technique not taught by the Hyuga clan, it is not completely incomprehensible. After all, Neji discovered it himself. Gentle Fist needs to cooperate with their unique Byakugan to achieve ultimate. Fungan is not from the Hyuga clan. Even if he realizes the 8 trigrams air palm, he will not be able to tap acupuncture points from the air like the Hyuga clan members. However, Hyuga Hiyashi still solemnly warned Hinata. Don't let other people know about this. If the elders of the clan ask, just say that I taught you. Hinata saw her father's solemn expression and nodded in agreement. Hyuga Hiyashi believes that his daughter learned 8 trigrams air palm from Fungan, but what about other tribesmen? Especially those elders, if they knew it, they would be the first to suspect that Hinata learned it and then taught it to outsiders, and they would definitely punish her for spreading the secret of Hyuga. Are you still going to train today? Hinata shook her head. Teacher Hong asked us to rest for a few days. Hyuga Hiyashi nodded. That's fine, then you can go and rest. Hinata said coquettishly. Well, actually I have an appointment with Fungan today. Hyuga Hiyashi raised his eyebrows. Have you started dating? Then he said calmly. Okay, I agree. Thank you, father. The corners of Hinata's mouth couldn't stop curling up. She felt that her father was particularly kind today. Hyuga Hiyashi coughed slightly and said, I just want to see Fungan, let's go together. Can you go see Fungan another day? No, ... In the end, Hinata couldn't resist Hyuga Hiyashi, and she didn't want to miss her appointment with Fungan, so she had to take her father with her. She could already imagine the awkward atmosphere when they met. Hinata tied her short hair into 2 small buns in the house and looked in the mirror. Suddenly I felt weird, so I tied my hair in braids on the side. Hinata looked at herself in the mirror and muttered. Why does it feel even weirder? It went back and forth like this, and finally seeing that the appointed time was coming, she walked out helplessly with her frizzy hair on her head. When will my hair grow long? Seeing Hinata's frizzy hair, how could Hiyashi not understand her little thoughts? Hyuga Hiyashi bit his back molars tightly. Little devil, you actually charmed my daughter like this, woo-woo, my daughter. He was secretly sad in his heart, but no one could share his pain. Then, Hinata and Hiyashi rushed towards the agreed place. During this period, Hinata kept trying to flatten her raised hair with her little hands, but there were always 1 or 2 disobedient bunches that couldn't be suppressed no matter how hard they were pressed. Not long after, the 2 arrived at the entrance of the village. Hyuga Hiyashi looked in Hinata's direction along the way and felt something was wrong, but he still resisted asking. Until now, he couldn't hold it in any longer. Did you make an appointment with him to leave the village together? Hinata glanced at Hiyashi's angry expression and her heart beat faster. She nodded slightly. We plan to go to the kingdom of Tang in the next few days. Hearing Hinata's words, Hyuga Hiyashi almost spit out blood. The brat knows how to choose a place. The country of hot springs is a country named after its hot springs. He gritted his teeth and tried to calm down. Where's that boy Fungan? Hinata lowered her head and shook her head. It shouldn't be here yet, right? However, there was only a wall between Fungan and them at this time. He stared blankly at the light blue butterfly hairpin in his hand. Before Hinata and the 2 arrived at the entrance of the village, Fungan saw her from a long distance away. Just as he excitedly took out the gift he had prepared in advance, he suddenly found someone following her. Hyuga Hiyashi. Fungan's face suddenly turned pale, and he subconsciously hid outside the wall. Why did you bring Dad to this date? Just when Fungan was scratching his head and wondering what to do. A voice reached his ears. You brat, you are here. Fungan raised his eyes and saw Hyuga Hiyashi with his eyes open and a look of suppressed anger, and Hinata behind him, who was twirling his fingers in embarrassment. He swallowed his saliva and said with a sly smile, "Uncle." "Hello, uncle." Hyuga Hiyashi looked at him with white eyes and said nothing. Fungan felt the pressure doubled, and felt that every inch of his skin was being seen through. I never thought Byakugan was so coercive before. This feeling is like being caught in a scene, but Hinata and I haven't done anything yet. It's so unfair. Brat, if I didn't come today, would you have kidnapped my precious daughter? Dare to go abroad. My daughter has never been out of Konoha village. Hyuga Hiyashi expressed his dissatisfaction with Fungan in his heart. Seeing that the situation is very bad, Hinata's little head turned and said, don't you have something to say to Fungan?" After what Hinata said, his calm and self-confident aura was created in vain. Hyuga Hiyashi rolled his eyes helplessly, coughed slightly, and straightened his expression. "How did you learn 8 trigrams air palm?" Fungan said weakly. "I am born, do you believe it?" After saying that, he saw Hyuga Hiyashi's face darken. Relying on the memory of his past life, he basically knows everything. Who would believe this kind of thing? He sighed. Maybe I have a higher understanding. No matter how Hyuga Hiyashi asked, he just said this, and Hyuga Hiyashi had to compromise. In the end, the 3 of them headed to the country of Yu together. Fungan, who originally wanted to develop a relationship with Hinata on the road, now can only develop a relationship with his future father-in-law. On the other side, in the Konoha Security Department, Shimura Junta said calmly, "Taimang, he left the village, do you understand? This is your last chance for revenge." My subordinate understands. In front of him, Taimang was half kneeling in front of Shunta. His body was much thinner than before, and his face was bloodless, looking sickly. If Fungan were present, it would be difficult to recognize him. "Okay, go ahead and I will do my best to help you find medical personnel who can treat Taiyang." "Thank you, Captain." The thin Taimang knocked his head to the ground, then stood up, put on the same mask as Anbu, and left the security department. After he left, Shimura Shunta looked at the blood stains on the ground with disgust on his face. "Weijong, find someone to clean this house." Then a middle-aged man nodded angrily. Not long after, 7 or 8 people showed up, scrambling to clean the room. Shimura Shunta returned to his office with an impatient expression. As soon as he opened the door, he noticed an old man wearing a cane and wearing bandages sitting on his office chair. This person is none other than Shimura Danzo. After seeing the person coming, Shimura Shunta immediately straightened his face and straightened his body. "Uncle, why are you here?" Shimura Danzo said with a sullen face. "What uncle? How many times have I told you to call me my job title in the workplace?" Shimura Shunta nodded quickly. "Okay, Nakage-sama. Quote. Quote. What did you just call me?" "Lord Danzo." Shimura Danzo stood up and drew the curtains. "Shunta, is that subordinate of yours strict with his mouth?" Shimura Shunta's mouth curved slightly. "His son is now under my control. Even if he dies, he will never dare to reveal anything." "Well, find an opportunity to send his son to me as well." After finishing speaking, Shimura Danzo was about to leave, leaning on a cane. Staring at Danzo's back, Shimura Shunta hesitated. Then he gritted his teeth and asked weakly, "But uncle, Master Danzo, I promised Taimang to heal his son." Shimura Danzo said in a deep voice, just tell him and send him for treatment. At that time, you tricked him into coming to my place to transform his body. Aren't you very good at finding excuses? Besides, it's impossible for him to come back alive in that state." Shimura Shunta knew what would happen if he sent Taiyang to Danzo. If Taimang hadn't been begging him for a way to kill Fungan, he wouldn't have let Taimang go to his uncle's place and be transformed into a monster. After Danzo leaves, Shimura Shunta came to Konoha Hospital, stared at Taiyang's lower body on the hospital bed, and murmured to himself. "Anyway, you are now worse off than dead, right? Why not be as relieved as your father?" After 2 days of long journey, Fungan and his party finally arrived at the kingdom of Tang at night. The country of Yu is famous for its hot springs, and its scenery and culture are particularly outstanding. This small country never has any off-season, and it is always crowded with people. Originally, Fungan planned to soak in the hot springs directly after dinner. But now that Hyuga Hiyashi is here, he hasn't even held Hinata's little hand along the way. Fungan glanced at Hinata next to her with resentment. Hinata made a helpless expression. Hyuga Hiyashi turned to Fungan and shouted, "What are you two doing? Let's go." "Good." Fungan gritted his teeth, took Hinata's little hand and followed him. Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes suddenly widened, and his pupils focused on the hands they were holding. Hinata felt shy being stared at. But Fungan didn't shy away from it at this time. He figured out that instead of making himself uncomfortable, it would be better to make Hyuga Hiyashi, an old man, feel uncomfortable. "Hinata, let's go to Genin-Gudo." Fungan took Hinata's little hand and walked to the ninja tool hall on the side. Hinata couldn't help but glance back at Hyuga Hiyashi. Hyuga Hiyashi froze on the spot with a dull look on his face. "It's over, it's completely over, the brat has no shyness about my old father." He could clearly feel that his daughter Hinata had been taken care of by Fungan. If he didn't come today, he might not have a grandson in his arms soon. "You brat, my daughter is only 12 years old." The more he thought about it, the more frightened he became, and he quickly followed the two of them. Seeing that the two were just holding hands, he breathed a sigh of relief. Fungan only bought a few seal scrolls at the ninja tool hall. He planned to claim the Kusanagi sword that Orochimaru gave him as its owner, otherwise he would not be able to use some functions of the Kusanagi sword, and there was a possibility of being summoned back by Orochimaru. The three of them had dinner together again and walked around for a few times, and the sky gradually dropped. Finally came to the last step of the process, soaking in the hot springs. This was originally Fungan's ultimate big plan. He also had a swimsuit specially chosen according to Hinata's size hidden in his backpack, but now he was afraid of being discovered. Well, Fungan couldn't help but sigh. Hyuga Hiyashi glanced at him, and he naturally knew what Fungan was thinking. Another important reason why Unokuni Hot Spring is famous is the mixed bathing. But with Hyuga Hiyashi present, how could he succeed in his evil plan? He was the first to rent 2 independent rooms with 2 independent hot spring pools, allowing Fungan to soak in the hot springs without spending a cent. Hyuga Hiyashi and Fungan took the lead in changing into white bathrobes and walked out of the changing room. Hyuga Hiyashi glanced at Fungan and his pupils shrank. 8-pack abs. It's unreasonable. Even if this brat is handsome, he still has such a good figure. Fungan felt Hyuga Hiyashi's gaze, and the corners of his mouth curved slightly. His stature was an unexpected gain when he used Thunder Attribute Chakra to activate body cells. "Don't expose your belly, you'll catch a cold." Hyuga Hiyashi quickly found another long bathrobe to cover his upper body. Fungan rolled his eyes at him. If he knew that Hinata had touched her, I wonder if he would eat him. Suddenly, Hinata's voice was as thin as a mosquito's. "This bathrobe seems a bit small." Hinata put on a white bathrobe and walked out of the changing room with a blushing face. Fungan swallowed hard, his eyes widened, especially when he saw Shui Bai, he almost suffocated. "Is this too small?" "It's obviously too big." Her 2 soft balls were ready to come out under the bathrobe. "I don't know if the bathrobe is really a bit too small, or if it's just too big for her, so it always tends to fall off. Her little hands pull it up from time to time." "Hinata, go to that box. Fungan and I will go to this one." Hinata blushed and nodded. Hyuga Hiyashi didn't stop for a moment, grabbed Fungan who was standing and walked towards the box. After starting to soak in the hot springs, Fungan and Hyuga Hiyashi were in a very awkward situation. At this moment, Fungan's mind was filled with images of Hinata bathing in hot springs. However, as soon as he raised his eyes and saw the old man Hyuga Hiyashi, he was instantly discouraged. Hyuga Hiyashi glanced at Fungan and asked in a deep voice, "How far have you and Hinata developed?" Fungan was shocked. Asking such a pointed question, it seems that Lao Dang has already planned to take advantage of the separation from Hinata to have a thorough inquiry with the column team. There's really no real development. Hearing this, Hyuga Hiyashi frowned. No real development? What's the meaning? Has everything developed except the substantive ones? Hyuga Hiyashi's face darkened. "You brat, don't be vague." Fungan scratched his head. "We just held hands." "Anything else?" "Just a hug." Every time Fungan said a word, Hyuga Hiyashi's face turned ugly. "Anything else?" "Touched it." And, wait, touched it. Hyuga Hiyashi walked up to Fungan, his teeth chattering. Fungan could tell from his clenched fists that he wanted to beat himself to death. He quickly explained, I didn't touch it, she touched me. Nonsense. My daughter is so reserved, how could she take the initiative to touch you? Go ask Hinata. When Hyuga Hiyashi heard his words, his momentum suddenly dropped sharply. If he had the nerve to ask Hinata, he wouldn't take advantage of Hinata's absence to ask Fungan these questions. Alas, Hyuga Hiyashi let out a long sigh. Ever since Hanabi showed her talent, I haven't expressed much concern for Hinata. If it hadn't been for the dispute between her and me last time because of you, I would have almost forgotten the neglect of her over the years. Fungan listened silently to his heartfelt expression without interrupting. You know, she still remembers the things you helped her out when she was a child. I always thought that her feelings for you were wrong and she was just grateful. But these days I found that I was wrong and she was real. I like you, boy. Hyuga Hiyashi put his hand on his shoulder. So, Fungan, can you help me take more care of Hinata? Fungan nodded, and when he looked at Hyuga Hiyashi, his eyes showed sincerity. I will, father-in-law. Hyuga Hiyashi raised his eyebrows slightly. You brat, your glibness makes me feel that Hinata will be bullied if she is with you. On the other side of the box, a blushing Hinata buried half of her head in the hot spring. In fact, these two boxes are only separated by a dense layer of bamboo in the middle, and the sound insulation effect is almost zero. Hinata heard all the conversation between the two of them. She blushed and murmured in a low voice. Fungan is an idiot, why should I touch him? And what my father said, it should be what I think it means. At this time, her face was red, nervous and happy like a deer bumping around. She put her little hand on her chest and felt her heart beating rapidly. Normally, she would not feel her heartbeat at all. It was enough to prove how nervous she was. It is not advisable to soak in hot springs for too long. When the three of them felt a little sleepy, they changed their clothes and left. As soon as Fungan came out, he saw Hinata's red face. He asked with some worry, have you been soaking for too long? Do you have a headache? As soon as Hinata saw him, she remembered the previous conversation between him and Hyuga Hiyashi. Her already rosy face turned even redder. She shook her head quickly. It's okay, it's just a little hot. That's good. Fungan nodded and took Hinata's little hand. Let's go to bed. Hyuga Hiyashi's brows knitted together as he came from behind. Are you really sleeping? Natural. Yeah, very good. Hyuga Hiyashi nodded. Fungan glanced at Hyuga Hiyashi with disdain. It's really a villain's heart to judge a gentleman's heart. Then Hyuga Hiyashi followed the two and came to a small hotel. Fungan took a brief look at the environment and hygiene. Overall, I'm quite satisfied and the hygiene is good. The surrounding noise is not too loud, otherwise it would be bad if some ahahahe sounds suddenly come out after resting until midnight. Fungan saw the woman dozing on her stomach at the front desk and walked up to ask. Is there any room left? When she heard that business was coming, the woman at the front desk suddenly woke up and wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth. How many more are there? The woman at the front desk paused for a moment and looked at the two people in front of her. The man was handsome, and the girl next to her had a red face and seemed very shy. A man and a woman, traveling to a tourist resort, heading to a small hotel in the middle of the night. Conditions met. Only one room left. The woman winked at Fungan. It seems to be telling him, I can see the purpose of your trip at a glance. How about this assist? Isn't it good that you, Sister Kun? Fungan was stunned for a moment, then saw her smart look and realized it immediately. The people in this country of soup are extraordinary. Even small hotels are so good at guessing guests' intentions. No wonder the country is not big but its economy is booming. However, before Fungan could say anything, Hyuga Hiyashi behind him widened his eyes. With a dark face, he took a step forward and said in a low voice, open 3 rooms. The woman suddenly became confused. Masaka, could this be a father traveling with his children? Major misstep. But no matter how she looked at them, they didn't look like they were born to the same father and mother. Sorry, give you the key. She quickly took out the keys to the 3 rooms and nodded her head in apology. How much? Originally, it was 1,120 taels per night. I'm sorry that the previous misunderstanding caused you trouble. 3,000 taels for 3 rooms. Do you think that's okay? Snort. Hyuga Hiyashi hummed, took out 3,000 taels and gave it to the woman, then picked up the key and went upstairs. After he left, the woman frowned and thought, since they are a family, why do they need 3 rooms? After the 3 of them went upstairs, they happened to be in the 3 innermost rooms on the 2nd floor, which were 204, 205 and 206. Hyuga Hiyashi coughed before entering room 204. Fungan naturally knew that this was aimed at him. Good night, Hinata. Good night, Maple. After Fungan entered room 205, he practiced according to his usual habits. Nowadays, he has become more proficient in ninjutsu, and the types are more complete. He now knows 6 of the 7 attributes of chakra, and there is still one yang attribute ninjutsu that he has not yet mastered. When he was reading the book of formations in his previous life, he should have carefully read through the medical ninjutsu. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to regret it now. Medical ninjutsu is very poor in the senses, but anyone who has traveled through time understands the importance of medical ninjutsu. In a battle between ninjas, it is too easy to lose an arm or a leg accidentally. With some powerful medical ninjutsu, a broken arm can be reattached as long as the treatment is timely. After all, the development of the human body in this ninja world is too outrageous. Eye transplant. Just cut it out and stuff it into your own eye socket and use it. Cell transplant. No matter what, just stick it in with a big needle. After going through all the training procedures, Fungan breathed a sigh of relief. He took out the sealing scroll he bought during the day and recognized the owner of the Kusanagi sword he had picked up. He looked at the sealing technique on the scroll, and the more he looked at it, the more familiar it became. As expected, the ninja tool is basically the same as the technique for summoning Summoningmon. After recognizing his master again, Fungan injected his own chakra into the Kusanagi sword, thus completely severing contact with Orochimaru. Fungan played with the lengthening and shortening of the Kusanagi sword and the function of enchanting chakra for a while, and then put it back into the scroll. I don't know if Hinata is asleep. Old Den, I didn't accomplish anything on our first date. He sat up and unzipped his backpack. There is a striped and tied swimsuit inside. Well, Fungan sighed and took out the light blue butterfly hairpin next to him. He originally wanted to give it to Hinata, but because he was afraid that Hyuga Hiyashi would see the striped swimsuit, he never dared to open the backpack. Boom boom. A sudden slight knock on the door startled Fungan, and he quickly stuffed everything into his backpack. Could it be that Lao Deng came to check the ward? Then Hinata's subtle voice came from outside the door. Are you asleep, Fungan? Fungan breathed a long sigh of relief. The door is unlocked, you can come in. Hinata carefully closed the door and sat next to Fungan. She blinked her beautiful eyes and looked at Fungan. Let us start. Start. Seeing Hinata's tender and beautiful eyes, his eyes widened instantly. Start with what? That's right, that practice you were talking about that day. Didn't you say that I was the only one who could help you? Oh, Fungan's eyes dimmed instantly. At this moment, Hinata suddenly saw something like a handkerchief stuck in the zipper of Fungan's backpack. Hinata pointed to the exposed corner of the striped swimsuit and asked doubtfully, what is this? Fungan looked in the direction she was pointing, and she was pointing at the swimsuit. He was suddenly sweating profusely, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Although he bought this for Hinata, he also bought it on a whim before, and it would be too bad to give her a swimsuit like this in this situation. Now I'm just fooling around. If she misunderstands what kind of cosplay I want to do, she'll put a pervert label on me in her heart. I need to calm down. Why are you sweating so much all of a sudden? Is that a handkerchief? Saying that, Hinata stretched her little hand towards her backpack. Fungan's eyes suddenly widened. When she wanted to stop him, Hinata had already unzipped her backpack. Ah! Hinata's whole body turned red after she saw the true appearance of the handkerchief. She originally thought it was a handkerchief, but she didn't expect it to be a tied swimsuit with very little fabric. If she wore it, at least half of the snow-white northern hemisphere would be exposed to the air. After seeing Hinata take it out completely, Fungan shrank. It's over. Why did I choose this swimsuit when my head was hot? I'm afraid the favorability I've worked so hard to build up will return to zero. What's going on? On the other side, Hyuga Hiyashi, who didn't dare to sleep to death, suddenly heard Hinata's exclamation and straightened his back and sat up. You brat. Fortunately, I didn't sleep to death. Hyuga Hiyashi quickly put on his clothes and shoes and rushed out to take a look. Because the scene was very embarrassing, room 205 was very quiet. Even if Hyuga Hiyashi's movement was subtle, it was immediately captured by Fungan. Fungan's pupils dilated. If Hyuga Hiyashi sees this swimsuit again, he will probably be looked down upon by them for the rest of his life. Just when Fungan was thinking about what to do, Hinata blushed and asked, "Is this for me?" Right. In a panic, Fungan couldn't think anymore, so he subconsciously admitted it. He immediately regretted it. He could already imagine Hinata standing up angrily, throwing her swimsuit in his face, and yelling pervert. The next second, just as he expected, Hinata stood up. Fungan quickly closed his eyes. However, the scene he expected did not happen. Hinata blushed and said shyly, "Thank you. This is the first time I have received such a swimsuit." Hearing her words, Fungan opened his eyes a little and saw that Hinata was not angry. He asked weakly, "Why aren't you angry?" Hinata shook her head and chuckled, "I will treasure whatever Fungan gives me." A warm current was about to urinate from Fungan's eyes. Hinata. When he was about to hug Hinata, Hinata quickly moved away with a red face. She whispered, "But, I will never wear it." Boom, boom, boom. There was a rapid knock on the door, accompanied by Hyuga Hiyashi's low voice, "Fungan, Hinata, don't mess around." "Father." Hinata's pretty face was shocked. "Why is father here? What should I do?" Fungan was even more flustered than she was. They were in the same room in the middle of the night, and she still had this strange swimsuit in her hand. Gotta hide this thing first. His brain was working rapidly, and his eyes suddenly lit up. Got it. Hyuga Hiyashi outside the door suddenly remembered, wouldn't it be over if I just rolled my eyes? What an old fool. He slapped himself hard, turning on his white eyes. After seeing the scene inside room 205, Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes widened. They actually practicing. The scene that caught his eye was Fungan and Hinata sitting upright on the bed, looking like they were meditating. Impossible, absolutely impossible, there must be something wrong with my white eyes. Seeing such a scene, he felt a little bit angry. My beautiful and lovely baby girl is right next to you, where are you practicing? Hyuga Hiyashi raised his palm, condensed chakra, and suddenly pushed it through the air. Gentle fist 8 trigrams air palm, mini version. Relying on his Byakugan and his control over chakra, a 2 mm piece of chakra accurately broke the wooden bolt inserted backwards. Crunch. The door of room 205 was pushed open. After hearing the movement, Hinata's heart beat faster and her eyebrows twitched slightly. Fungan quickly opened his eyes. He looked at Hyuga Hiyashi with a blank expression. Why isn't Uncle sleeping yet? Hinata knew it was time to perform on her own. She made a dazed expression, as if she had been practicing for a long time and had a headache. Father, why are you here? Why am I here? Mainly anti-customer, right? Hyuga Hiyashi glared at Fungan fiercely. Fungan frowned slightly, looking even more confused and confused. Hyuga Hiyashi has a dark face. What were you doing just now? You didn't even hear the knock on the door. Fungan said calmly. We thought there was still a third exam, so we took advantage of this short period of time in the evening to practice. Unexpectedly, we were so immersed in practice that we didn't hear my uncle's knock on the door. Hinata nodded quickly in agreement. Yes, father. Hyuga Hiyashi gave Hinata a stern look. Her expression was unnatural, and Hyuga Hiyashi could easily tell that this was what Fungan taught her. After feeling her father's gaze, Hinata, who was a little scared, lowered her head slightly and took a peek with her eyes. It's getting late, go to bed early. Hyuga Hiyashi stopped asking too many questions. If he really wanted to ask something, his heart wouldn't be able to bear it. Hinata nodded and said to Fungan, "Good night." Okay, good night. Hinata slowly walked past Hyuga Hiyashi and returned to room 206. Seeing that his daughter had returned to her room, Hyuga Hiyashi took a deep look at Fungan and then left. After he left, Fungan breathed a long sigh of relief and lay on the bed in the shape of a wood. He glanced at the seal scroll next to him. Fortunately, I bought 3 scrolls before. Now the striped and tied swimsuit is lying in the seal scroll. At that moment before, his brain was spinning rapidly, and he thought of the safest way. The shuriken and kunai could be sealed into the scroll, and clothes should also be possible. Not long after, Fungan and Hinata fell asleep. On the other side, in room 204, Hyuga Hiyashi was lying on the bed with bloodshot eyes. He was always listening to what was going on next door. From the looks of it, he won't be able to sleep tonight. Afterwards, Fungan and the other two spent a few more days in Yuno country before preparing to return to Konoha. Since Fungan only prepared snacks when the three of them came, they relied on Bingliong pills to eliminate hunger for the second half of the journey, but the taste was really unpleasant and hard. On this trip back, they learned the importance of stocking up on supplies. Dried fruits, simple meals, potato chips, juice. Hinata had a light blue butterfly hairpin stuck in her hair, and she was mumbling something while putting it in her bag. The three of them shuttled through various shops in Yuno country. Hinata and Fungan were responsible for picking food and putting it in their backpacks, while Hyuga Hiyashi was responsible for paying. You can buy whatever you want. It feels good to have money. Fungan sighed inwardly. Father. Hearing Hinata's call, Hyuga Hiyashi knew that it was time for him to burst the gold coins. Burst. For the sake of my daughter, exploding some gold coins is nothing. He walked up to the boss and pointed at something half a man's height. How much do these cost? The boss chuckled. 13,758 taels, I'll give you a fraction, just 13,750 taels. Hyuga Hiyashi was very disdainful. Am I short of 8 taels? It's simply an insult to me. When he fumbled for his wallet, he paused. When did the bulging wallet when I came here become so dry? When I saw that there was only 1,000 taels left in my wallet. His face instantly turned pale as paper and he froze in place. Even if the boss gives him another 1,375 taels, he is still 375 taels short of being able to afford it. If he were in Konoha, he could still get credit on credit, but in Yu country, who would dare to give credit to a stranger? Fortunately, at this moment, Fungan noticed Hyuga Hiyashi with embarrassment written on his face. Then I saw the shriveled wallet in his hand, and I suddenly understood. Uncle, you took the wrong wallet, that's mine. Fungan stepped forward and exchanged his wallet with Hyuga Hiyashi's wallet. Hyuga Hiyashi was taken aback for a moment and then reacted quickly. What a great son-in-law. So sensible. He glanced at Fungan with gratified eyes. Then he opened his wallet. His expression instantly changed from pleased to shocked. So much money. He suppressed his shock and paid first. After he was far away from the store, Hyuga Hiyashi couldn't help it anymore and threw Fungan's wallet to him. He asked angrily, "You brat, you actually have so much money. How can you go abroad without money and travel on a budget with Hinata? Then you won't tell. You didn't ask. You rushed to pay every time. I thought you enjoyed the pleasure of paying." Hyuga Hiyashi recalled that he rushed to pay for the hot spring baths, and when he booked a room, he rushed to rent 3 rooms. I'm the one who's trying to be the culprit. Suddenly, he deflated like a deflated balloon, and his face looked a little older. Seeing Hyuga Hiyashi's blank expression, Fungan could not bear to step forward. Uncle, we will be a family from now on. What's yours is mine. There's no point in dividing it between you and me. Hyuga Hiyashi was very angry and helpless when he saw his face. I have revealed to my daughter that as long as Fungan has certain abilities, he will not stand in their way. Now, knowing that Fungan can realize 8 trigrams air palm, he has a little recognition of his potential. He couldn't watch the first 2 Chunin exams, but he could in the third one. He didn't ask how strong Fungan was. As long as he had the strength to protect Hinata, he could truly rest assured that Hinata would get along with him. The premise is not to have grandchildren so early. Come on, uncle, it will get dark again soon. Fungan looked at Hyuga Hiyashi who was standing still and shouted. Immediately, Hyuga Hiyashi, whose eyes were clear again, shook his sleeves and followed the footsteps of the two. The 3 of them galloped along. After a few hours, it became completely dark. Hinata also felt hungry, so the 3 of them stopped to rest. Fungan took out a bunch of food and drink from his backpack. Hyuga Hiyashi saw that what Fungan took out were basically snacks. He frowned and asked, "Are you satisfied with these things?" "Don't worry, uncle, you'll have enough to eat." As he said this, Fungan took out a lot of potato chips, spicy sticks, small fish and other various 3-0 foods from his backpack. Hyuga Hiyashi was dumbfounded when he looked at the snacks piled as high as half a person. I spent more than 3,700 taels to buy these junk foods. Fungan and Hinata don't care whether the food is junk or not, as long as it tastes good, that's it. Fungan took out the uneaten Bingliong pill and handed it to Hyuga Hiyashi. Then uncle, please eat this. When Hyuga Hiyashi saw the pills, he remembered the hard and unpleasant taste. I'd better eat junk food. Hinata handed Hyuga Hiyashi a bag of potato chips. This is original, it should suit your taste. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned and tore open the package and tasted a piece. It's really junk food. It's full of additives in one bite. Fungan glanced at him. Then you still eat. I'm doing this for your own good. As long as I eat enough and quickly, all the junk food will go into my stomach and it won't harm you. Hyuga Hiyashi swallowed and picked up another bag of tomato-flavored potato chips. After tasting a piece, he frowned and said, "The tomato-flavored one has more additives. You two are not allowed to eat tomato-flavored food. There are too many additives." Then they quickly destroyed one bag after another. There is probably no hard part about him except his mouth. Hinata leaned next to Fungan and whispered, "Actually, Dad likes ketchup the most, let's just leave the tomato flavor to him." Fungan nodded. While eating spicy strips, Fungan suddenly felt something moving around him. He stood up and said in a low voice, "Uncle, Hinata, it seems like something is approaching us." Hearing this, Hyuga Hiyashi and Hinata immediately put down the snacks in their hands and quickly stood up. "Roll your eyes." The two of them opened their eyes at the same time. The field of vision in the eyes rapidly expanded outward. In just an instant, the two of them locked onto many figures walking through the woods. 7, 8, 9, 10. In front of their eyes, the two saw 10 ninjas quietly groping in their direction from all around. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned. Although he was curious about why Fungan could sense it in advance, it was obvious that now was not the time to ask this question. "Fungan, Hinata, protect yourself." He didn't dare to be careless. From the opponent's movement speed, he could tell that they were at least Chunin level. And among the three of them, there are 2 Genin, and he is the only Jonin. Once the opponent has 1 or 2 Jonin, the situation will be very bad. Hinata nodded and assumed the same gentle fist starting position as Hyuga Hiyashi. After hearing Hyuga Hiyashi's words, Fungan quickly stuffed the snacks into his bag. Hyuga Hiyashi noticed this behavior and frowned. "Stop pretending." "Ah." Fungan was stunned and stopped what he was doing. "He told me to stop pretending. Did he see that I was hiding my strength?" Fungan touched his nose. "When did Uncle find out?" Hyuga Hiyashi thought he was asking why she didn't turn around and see him packing snacks. So he said disdainfully, "Byakugan's ability." Fungan was stunned for a moment. It turns out that Byan still has such ability. Suddenly a figure jumped onto a tree branch in the distance, about 20 meters away from them. The ninja thought that his movements were very light and very stealthy, but in fact, every move he made was within the lock range of the Byakugan. Hyuga Hiyashi is waiting for this moment. The effective killing distance of his 8 trigrams air palm is 20 meters, so he is waiting for the opponent to enter his range first. Hyuga Hiyashi immediately rolled his eyes. 8 trigrams air palm. He aimed a palm at the tree branch in the distance. The high-density chakra blocks are like palm-sized air bombs, rushing out instantly. Puff! Before the ninja could react, the invisible 8 trigrams air palm punched through his chest, a mouthful of blood spurted out, and he fell to the ground dead. While striking first, kill with one move to scare the other ninjas. As expected of the clan leader, Fungan was filled with praise in his heart. 9 more. Hyuga Hiyashi always observes the positions of the other 9 people with his 360-degree white eyes. In his eyes, the other 9 people slowed down after seeing the death of the first approaching ninja, and gradually gathered together, apparently preparing to launch an attack together. If they attack together, even if he has a Byakugan, he will be unable to withstand them. Hyuga Hiyashi, with a solemn expression on his face, shouted loudly, "I am Konoha Shinobi of the Fire Nation, and I advise you not to lose your life in vain just to kill people and steal wealth." He was in a foreign country and could be targeted. He judged that this was the reason. The other 9 people gathered together and seemed to be discussing something. After a moment, a voice came from the woods. You two can go, the red-haired one stays. Hearing this, Hyuga Hiyashi frowned. Even those who told Konoha Shinobi could not let them retreat, and also specified Fungan to stay. Fungan was also stunned when he heard it. It turned out that it was directed at him. Hyuga Hiyashi asked in a low tone, Fungan, do you have any enemies? Fungan frowned. I'm friendly, handsome and polite, who could hate me so much? Taeyong and Taemong. Their names came to his mind. The old and the young are really annoying. Fungan whispered. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned slightly. You said we are annoying. Quote. Fungan was speechless. Who said anything about you? The voice of the ninja who just spoke came again. Have you thought about it? When Hyuga Hiyashi was about to speak, Fungan spoke first. I stayed. Then he turned to the two of them and said, you go first, I will be there in a moment. He planned to stay by himself and extract words from the other party to see if it was really the old man and the young man who sent them here. Hinata shook her head repeatedly and looked at Fungan firmly. No, let's go together. Seeing Fungan making such a choice without hesitation in a life-and-death situation, Hyuga Hiyashi made up his mind angrily. No, you go together. Fungan scratched his head. Are you mistaken? Angry roars came from the woods. Are you leaving or not? If not, don't leave at all. The figure of the 9 ninjas moved instantly, throwing shurikens at the 3 of them from all corners. The moment Hyuga Hiyashi senses the opponent's attack, he releases a large amount of chakra from the chakra acupuncture points in his body, and quickly performs a circular spinning movement. 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. Suddenly a hemispherical chakra covering the whole body appeared from the ground. The thrown shurikens couldn't get close to me at all, and were knocked away one by one. As soon as he stopped spinning, he immediately condensed chakra in his palm without stopping. At the same time, he locked eyes on one of them and slapped it out from the air. The extremely fast high-density chakra block rushed towards the ninja in front. However, this time the opponent was wary and immediately dodged away. Boom! The tree trunk that the ninja was squatting on was directly penetrated by the 8 trigrams air palm. The ninja who was hiding looked at the pierced tree trunk with lingering fear. Brother, didn't you just kill a kid? Why is there still Konoha Jonin? How could I know? The ninja who spoke before had a fierce look in his eyes and clenched his fists. In short, if we don't kill him, not only will we not get the money, but we will even die here. In fact, he knew it, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to summon so many people against a kid, and none of them would be weak. But he couldn't refuse the price offered by his employer. As long as he accomplished this deal, he would find a small village to spend the rest of his life safely. Tiangwang, Hattori, you two work with me to restrain that Konoha Jonin, and the others go kill those 2 brats. As soon as the red-haired kid is dead, we will retreat. The leading ninja quickly deployed tactics. Roger that, boss. The 2 ninjas whose names he called came to his side instantly. Fungan took a step forward and was about to take action when Hyuga Hiyashi stopped him. He said with a solemn expression, Fungan, take Hinata and leave quickly. This is not a battle that genin can participate in. Father, you should leave quickly while they are still wary of me. Without complete assurance, Hyuga Hiyashi did not dare to take action rashly. In a one-to-many situation, he had to ensure that every time he refined chakra, it was effective. Otherwise, you will burn yourself to death. Fungan said seriously. Uncle, I am actually very strong. Hyuga Hiyashi frowned slightly. I know you are strong, but this is not a stage for you to show your strength. This is a battle that will determine life and death in an instant. Why don't you believe me? Do I look really weak? Fungan is depressed. At this time, the other party performed its duties and began to act. The 3 leaders rushed towards Hyuga Hiyashi. The remaining 6 ninjas threw shurikens at Fungan and Hinata. Hyuga Hiyashi looked solemn. He could either choose to fight against the 3 of them, or choose to protect Fungan and the other 2. But he wasn't given much time to think. In just an instant, he spun around again. 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven. As long as we can protect them. The eyes of the 3 ninjas who rushed towards him flashed cunningly. They had discovered the drawbacks of Hyuga Hiyashi revolving heaven before. The moment the rotation stops, there will be the largest gap. While the shurikens were being deflected, the ninjutsu of the 3 ninjas also followed. One person threw a kunai with a detonating talisman tied to it, and the remaining two quickly formed seals. Earth-style Tu Ling Dango. Earth-style split the earth and turned the palm. At the same time as the 3 to 4 meter high boulder was smashed down, another ninja slapped his hands heavily on the ground, causing cracks to spread from the ground. Hyuga Hiyashi's eyes have caught the attack, but his body has not stabilized yet. 8 trigrams air wall palm. Before he completely stopped spinning, he condensed chakra in the palms of his hands and clapped 2 palms hard at the flying kunai and rocks. The moment it hit the detonating talisman, the kunai flew out, but the same impact on the flying rock only left a palm crater. Hyuga Hiyashi was breathing heavily and his face was pale. It won't work after a while. I've been really negligent over the years. At this time, the crack between the boulder and the ground was less than 1 meter in front of him. That's too late. Just when he once again put into the 8 trigrams 64 palm starting position, he was ready to fight. An earth wall half a meter thick quickly rose in front of him. Boom! The flying rocks and cracks on the ground hit the earth wall with the same force as pebbles, only denting part of the wall. The expressions of the 3 people who looked proud just now suddenly changed. They didn't see the Hyuga Hiyashi seal, and it was obviously not the earth flow wall he used. The other 2 brats. It's even more impossible, and I didn't see them forming any seals. Are there other experts from Konoha hiding in the dark? The leader waved his hand and jumped back with Tianguang and Hattori beside him. Tianguang, feel if there are other people around you. The ninja named Tianguang nodded. Hyuga Hiyashi had a dull look on his face. In the scope of his eyes, he saw the chakra in Fungan's body suddenly surge, and then he slapped the ground, and a half-meter thick earth wall appeared in front of him. How can that be possible? He couldn't even form a seal. Even if he used such a powerful ninjutsu, why was he still breathless and pale? He hesitated and asked Fungan, "You?" Before he could finish speaking, Fungan answered first. "You guessed it right, it's me. I told you I'm strong, but you still don't believe me." Seeing his nose turned up to the sky, Hyuga Hiyashi felt a black line on his face and was shocked at the same time. Hinata on the side felt happy and a little frustrated when she saw how strong Fungan was. He didn't seem to be of any help. Her 8 trigrams air palm has an effective range of only 10 meters, and it is still the main acupoint sealing chakra. It is not as powerful as her father's that can penetrate it. Fungan looked at the 2 of them and said, "Uncle, please rest for a while." Hinata, lock their position. Hinata observed several people within range with her white eyes. 3 people are in the northeast direction, and 6 people are in the due east direction. Fungan nodded, jumped up, stood on the earth wall, and sucked back suddenly. When Tanaka was using the sensory ninjutsu to explore the master who was secretly attacking, he was keenly aware of Fungan jumping onto the earth wall at an extremely fast speed. "Brother, Hattori, what do you think he is doing?" The 2 of them looked at Fungan after hearing this, wondering what he was doing. Hattori said weakly, "Is he going to spit fire style? The fire is extinguished." While they were stunned, huge flames soared into the sky and headed toward the 3 of them. "What a fool! Set the mountain on fire!" The expressions of the 3 leading ninjas changed instantly and they quickly formed seals. They had no time to think about why this kid breathed out flames without forming seals. Earth style wall. Boom! The 3 ninjas slammed towards the ground, and the earth trembled as they drilled out of the half-meter thick earth wall. However, before the earth flow wall could fully rise, the sea of fire spewed out by Fungan covered their entire bodies. "Ah!" The 3 of them suddenly howled. Hyuga Hiyashi stared blankly at the flow of chakra that gradually disappeared in the sea of fire. "This," he muttered. "It doesn't seem unacceptable to have a grandchild early." Hinata's face instantly heated up. "Father!" Before the 2 remaining ninjas still alive in the sea of fire could react, Fungan held a kunai and turned into a life-threatening ghost. Puff! With one strike, the ninja named Hattori was killed on the spot. The remaining ninja who was the leader also looked frightened, and regardless of the pain of the burns on his body, he knelt down and begged for mercy. "I was wrong, my family has." Puff! There was a flash of cold light, and the kunai slashed his neck. "Sorry, you are going to say something about having an 80-year-old mother at home." "I have already heard it." Fungan threw away the blood-stained kunai and wiped the blood on his hands on his clothes. The ninja reluctantly covered his neck and spoke with difficulty. My dear wife, wait for me at home. Sweet wife. Fungan grabbed his shoulders hard, with a look of regret on his face. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Why didn't you tell me earlier? The remaining 6 ninjas looked at each other. There was only one thought in my mind, run. The boss is dead, and you still have a shitty job. They used the shuriken blind kun badu technique towards Fungan in unison. No matter if he hits it or not, with so many shurikens, no matter how awesome he is, he still has to avoid the edge temporarily. Then he ran away without looking back. However, Fungan didn't avoid it at all. Directly extract the chakra to the throat again and inhale suddenly. This kid is crazy. He won't hide or evade. He will kill us forcefully. We just lost our shurikens. You won't hate us so much, right? However, when the shuriken landed on him, it made a sound like hitting granite, which almost shocked their jaws. This horse is genin. Fire style. The fire is extinguished. Don't ask why you came in a different way, just ask. He is the second ninjutsu professor in the ninja world, willful. Unlike the vertical scope of the fire is extinguished on a large horizontal scale. In an instant, the woods turned into a sea of fire, and the light of the fire illuminated the dark night. From time to time, the smell of barbecue came from inside, which made Fungan and the 3 of them feel hungry and a little uncomfortable. He rushed into the sea of fire and helped them escape one by one. Suddenly, Hinata frowned slightly. A stream of chakra broke into the range of her Byakugan and rushed towards Fungan. 500 meters, 100 meters, 50 meters. She hurriedly shouted in the direction of Fungan, Fungan, someone is approaching you, very fast. At the same time as her voice came out, the figure had already rushed in front of Fungan holding a kunai. Die. I saw that the man was thin, his eyes were full of blood, and he roared and paddled towards Fungan's neck. Fungan moved quickly, held down his neck and smashed him towards the ground. Boom! Blood suddenly flowed out of the man's head. The thin man scratched his arm wildly with a kunai, but there were only a few white marks. Fungan's eyes narrowed and he asked with some uncertainty. Taimang. Although he looked completely different from before, Fungan still saw some similarities in his crazy eyes. That was the look he showed when he learned that his son would not be able to lift his head for the rest of his life. I'm going to kill you. My son was ruined by you. Taimang, who was pinned to the ground, roared crazily and didn't seem to care about the blood flowing from his head. Fungan scolded calmly. You old fool, you can't educate your own son well. I think I have to give you a good education. Fungan clenched his fist and punched him between his legs. Question mark. Fungan looked confused because he didn't hit anything. Old man, why is your kunkan gone? Hearing this, Taimang, who was in a state of madness, seemed to recall some painful memories, and stopped struggling, with a look of reminiscence in his eyes. It's a long story, it was a. Fungan punched him hard in the face. It's a kumba. Don't you know that villains die from talking too much? I just said a few words. Boom, another punch met his face. Sorry, that's easy. What did you want to say? Fungan felt a little guilty and reached out to pinch the bridge of his nose. Taimang was trembling all over, and his nostrils were dilated several times with anger. Ha ha ha, While he was laughing wildly, he took a kunai and inserted it into his chest. Are you angry? Just when Fungan was confused, Taimang's body changed, his body suddenly expanded, and white cells poured out crazily from the wound on his chest. Fungan jumped back quickly and stepped aside. What the hell? Taimang's body gradually became less human-like. His body and limbs were covered with white cells, appearing swollen, and were still squirming as if they were absorbing his nutrients. He looked very disgusting. Hyuga Hiyashi, whose face regained some color, said solemnly. Be careful, that person's health is not good. In Byakugan's field of vision, Taimang's chakra was only the size of a ping-pong ball. But his body became stronger and stronger, which was very strange. Tai suddenly opened his eyes, which were squeezed together by white cells, looked up to the sky and shouted angrily, waving his fists wildly in the woods. Where are you hiding? Come out. At this time, his body was already 5 meters tall, and his arm circumference was also surprisingly thick. It was estimated to be 50 centimeters thick. He shouted angrily and uprooted a tree, looking around. Hyuga Hiyashi broke into a cold sweat watching this scene. Fungan, let's retreat quickly, he seems to have lost his mind. You go first, I still have a secret weapon. Fungan took out the scroll and raised his eyes casually. I'll just try the Kusanagi sword on you. He quickly pulled the scroll open. Boom, a burst of smoke cleared. In his hand he was holding a striped swimsuit with minimal fabric. I got the wrong scroll. He sealed it back very quickly. Hinata behind her suddenly blushed. That's not what he gave me. Her white eyes clearly saw the secret weapon summoned by Fungan. Hyuga Hiyashi looked confused. Although he had seen it just now with Bai Yan, Fungan's seal was extremely fast, so he could only see its general appearance. It looks like a mask with threads. What's your secret weapon? A mask. Mask. Hearing her father's description, Hinata was so shy that she almost fainted. Fungan remained silent and did not choose to solve his doubts. At this time, the 5-meter-tall Taimang finally adapted to his eyes and discovered that Fungan and others were in front of him. It turned out that he was too tall, and his eyeballs were squeezed into deformities by cells. Before, he couldn't see what was going on underneath him. Taimang hugged the uprooted tree with both hands and swept it towards the ground. With the support of cell activation, Fungan's reaction speed has also been greatly improved. Although his body is extremely strong, he discovered during his previous visit to the Forest of Death that a powerful impact would still cause considerable damage to his body's interior. When the tree was only half a meter away from him, he jumped up instantly and used the absorption power of chakra to stick firmly to the tree. He quickly took out another scroll and opened it suddenly. Boom! The moment the Kusanagi sword appeared, he used the thunder attribute chakra in his body to enchant it. This smooth operation was completed in less than a blink of an eye. Fungan aimed at Taimang's head and stabbed out from the air. Hyuga Hiyashi, who had already jumped far away with Hinata, saw this scene and his face twitched. The secret weapon is just a 1-meter-long sword. What about poking the air? However, he couldn't remain calm the next second. Following Fungan's thoughts, puff, the Kusanagi sword extended out of thin air and pierced Taimang's eyeball quickly. There is even a sword several meters long extending from the back of its head. Roar! Taimang screamed in pain after being stabbed. The sound was deafening. Fungan had to cover his ears and distance himself. I saw Taimang holding the Kusanagi sword with both hands, and pulled it out suddenly, bringing out a large pool of blood and spilling it on the ground. He rushed towards Fungan, and when he started running, the ground trembled. Is it okay if the headshot penetrates you? Fungan was frightened and quickly jumped to the other side. With a thought, the Kusanagi sword instantly flew back to Fungan's hand. If the thunder attribute doesn't work, what about the power of yin and yang? Fungan did whatever he thought of. Mobilize the small power of yin and yang in the body and inject it into the Kusanagi sword. Due to the lack of yin and yang power, the luster of the sword body is much lighter than before, and it is almost invisible in the dark night. Taimang turned around and rushed towards Fungan again. Fungan held the Kusanagi sword tightly with both hands and raised it above his head. Lengthen. With a thought in his mind, a nearly 40-meter-long sword appeared in an instant, and struck down Taimang, who was charging madly. The extremely sharp Kusanagi sword, combined with the extremely destructive power of yin and yang, caused no resistance from the surrounding trees, and easily split the 5-meter-tall Taimang in half. Thump! The 5-meter-tall Taimang's body split in two and hit the ground, making a loud noise. However, after a burst of squirming, the strange white cells completely swallowed up Taimang. Taimang, who could still see a trace of humanoid outline, turned into two puddles of white flesh and tangled with each other. Now even if his mother came, he wouldn't be able to recognize it. Hinata saw this scene with her Byakugan. Her expression changed, a feeling of discomfort surged into her throat, and she hurriedly dismissed her Byakugan. Hyuga Hiyashi's scalp was also numb. He had never seen such a strange scene. Fungan frowned. He guessed that it was either Orochimaru or Konoha's eyeball controller who liked to do scientific research and used him as a test subject for research. Fortunately, after a while, the white cells seemed to have lost their source of nutrients and began to shrink, gradually developing into the shape of a sapling. Fungan thought about it and shortened the 40-meter Kusanagi sword in his hand. No wonder Orochimaru keeps collecting all the Kusanagi swords. Fungan looked at the Kusanagi sword. When he was about to seal the Kusanagi sword back to the scroll, as soon as he turned the sword over, he saw a group of white cells the size of a palm clinging to the other side of the sword and crawling onto the back of his hand. Fungan was so frightened that he quickly slapped him away. However, the white cells seeped directly into the back of his hand and burrowed into his body. His expression changed, and he quickly sealed the Kusanagi sword and looked at his left hand. I won't be swallowed up by it like him, right? By the way, these things should be first-generation cells, right? In his impression, first-generation cells have this ability to regenerate. Just when he was worried, Hyuga Hiyashi and Hinata also rushed over. Hiyashi looked at Fungan with incredulous eyes. He can use ninjutsu without forming seals, and he also has a weapon that can be lengthened or shortened, and he can carry shurikens with his body. Each one shocked him so much that he didn't know where to start. Seeing that Fungan had been looking at his left hand, Hinata quickly opened her Byakugan and stepped forward, gently grabbing his little hand. After careful observation, I found that there were no wounds on the surface and the veins were intact. Her worried expression returned to normal. Seeing Hinata's worried look, Fungan thought for a moment and decided not to tell them about the white cells yet, lest she worry in vain. Then Fungan simply searched for the shurikens and kunai on these ninjas and put them into his bag. Not picking it up is also a waste. The three of them walked for another half an hour, found a stream, and simply washed their faces. Hyuga Hiyashi, who had resisted asking questions along the way, still came over. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, "Are you really 13? Fungan, who was looking for juice in his backpack, was stunned for a moment. "I don't look 13, Hyuga Hiyashi said angrily. "Except for your appearance, how do you look like a 13-year-old? How long has it been since Yuhi Kurenai learned that he can spit out a great fireball with a diameter of 5 meters? In just over a month, Hyuga Hiyashi was shocked and doubtful about his life. Fungan scratched his head. "Don't ask, just ask because I am gifted." Hearing his answer, Hyuga Hiyashi didn't believe it and sighed. "Fortunately, there is no competition for a genius like you. Otherwise, how would Neji, Sasuke and others still be called geniuses? I'm just a little more enlightened." Fungan didn't dare to belittle himself as a genius. Counting from the time he started learning ninjutsu after weaning, it was equivalent to 10 years of learning. "Tell me the truth, uncle, are you as strong as Jonin now?" Seeing Hyuga Hiyashi's solemn expression, Fungan nodded. "It's pretty much the same." Ever since Hiyashi was willing to die for him and Hinata, Fungan had chosen to trust him, otherwise he would not have released Earth Style without seal in front of him. The only thing in the village that he cared about was Danzo's right eye, Shisui's distinguished heavenly gods. As long as he is willing, he can tamper with other people's memories without others noticing, but in the end he died without actually using distinguished heavenly gods. Danzo is the type who can choke to death even if he holds a king bomb in his hand. Sharingan is truly a pervert. When Fungan thinks of the Uchiha clan, he thinks of their pervert eye skills. If given the chance, he would deduct a Sharingan no matter what. Hyuga Hiyashi was silent for a moment and asked, "Why do these people want to kill you?" Fungan spread his hands. "I don't know either." He speculated that the first-generation cells in Taimang's body were related to Danzo, but he and Danzo had no intersection at all, and he couldn't figure out why he would attack him. Tainaga, Taimang, Shimura Shunta, Shimura Danzo. He thought to himself, connecting 4 people he could think of who were related. But neither Shunta nor Danzo seemed to be characters who would take action to avenge Taimang. "Hey, I have a headache." Fungan just thought about it for a while and felt a headache. On the other side, Hinata was like a hamster, silently destroying bags of snacks one after another. She was also a little curious about Fungan's strength, but compared to asking questions, her stomach seemed to have to be solved first. By the time Fungan noticed Hinata, she had already wiped out the pile of snacks as high as half a person, leaving only a few scattered packages. Noticing Fungan's gaze looking over, Hinata was about to stuff the potato chips into her mouth, hesitated for a second, and put them back in the bag. She lowered her eyes in embarrassment. "I couldn't hold it back and ate too much." "How can you grow up if you don't have enough to eat?" Fungan rubbed her hair. "Hinata, Fungan scratched his head in embarrassment. "Can you lean on me for a moment?" Hinata nodded shyly and let out a sigh. Cough, 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 cough. Hyuga Hiyashi, who was eating on the side, suddenly made a weird coughing sound. Seeing that he didn't say anything to stop him, Fungan also pretended to be confused. Uncle, is your throat stuck? He leaned on Hinata's shoulder, pretending not to know why. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.